Noodles and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all. You told me that you wish I was somebody you never met. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. I kissed your lips, make you grip the sheets with your fingertips. Last bottle of Jack.
Here we go. Welcome to OverDrive. On a Monday, Jim Taddy, Dave Festek with you, just playing around with the earbuds. So I can hear myself now, which is kind of sad because I never listen to myself.
Yeah, well, you're a pro. You don't need to. You just, all these years in the business, it just comes out.
A lot of people would agree with you. They don't listen to me either, but nonetheless, what do we have in the show today? Let's go through this. This is a Monday, obviously, first full week of July, right? Marty Biron will be by at 4:20. After that, we have Steve Phillips at 5:05. Yes Guy, No Guy at 5:30. So fasten our seatbelts for that one. Easton Cowan at 6:05. And Eric Kratz talking baseball, former Blue Jay, at 6:30. So I guess, just because Marty Biron's up first, we'll sort of dust off the hockey. And I guess the breaking stuff is forget about offer sheets. All the RFAs are going to arbitration, and those that tried to sort of skate through, the teams decide to take them to arbitration. So there's going to be no offer sheets, right?
Yeah, and, bad day for talk radio, right? Yeah. Summertime NHL talk radio really benefits when there's a good offer sheet story going, and we can delve into the what ifs and whys of, who's trying to poach who from whom. We're not going to see it this year. It's a real shame. I don't know how many times it gets said, but it'd be nice if NHL GMs played a little dirtier now and then, Tapman.
Well, I don't know that we ever, obviously both of us go back a number of years. I don't know that we ever thought we'd reach the point where the cap would go up and people would still have a lot of money to spend. And so, you could just sort of follow, there wasn't much on free agent frenzy days, so now we'll go to the offer. Oh, no offer sheets.
Yeah.
And right away we're going, there has to be a lot of trades. Well, what if there aren't?
Well, what if there aren't and you're a Leaf fan? Because they need, they need some stuff.
They do. And I think that, as we sit here right now, I think we both believe there's some sort of a trade that will happen. I don't know exactly, what goes out, and I'm not really concerned anymore about what goes out because that's the easy part of it. What comes in is the big question. So you've got a hole on the right side of the top line. You got a hole on the left side of the second line, and you've got a glut of bottom six forwards. So I don't know exactly how you solve that in July, and maybe you don't want to. Maybe you sort of take up to the trade deadline to solve that after you've looked at a number, and they will. They'll shuffle the deck on both those. They did that last year on the left side of the second line, and it seemed to be negotiable going into the playoffs, too.
I don't know if you can afford to wait to the trade deadline, though, Jim, because you think about, you've lost the 105-point player in Mitch Marner, the guy who's assisted on 50% of Austin Matthews' goals since Mike Babcock left town, and they've played together primarily over that stretch. So you lose that. You're coming off, a year where Austin Matthews wasn't at his best health-wise, a career low 33 goals, didn't do much better in the playoffs in spite of that one really great Game 6 moment down in Fort Lauderdale. Isn't it a little risky to go into the season knowing you're a top six forward short and just hoping that someone will fill that void, the old internal improvement idea? You do that and then you get an injury or two. That's the recipe for kind of flirting with not making the playoffs in my mind.
Yeah, and it's not just a top six forward. It's, as you say, 50% of Austin Matthews' production came from him. Pretty good penalty killer, pretty good power play quarterback as well. So it's a three-pronged pitchfork, if you will.
And you believe you can, the penalty killing you can do it without Mitch Marner. I think you're pretty sure you got enough.
That's probably the easiest one to solve.
You can probably fill that hole.
Yeah.
The power play one, look, they've been really good with Morgan Riley at the top of the umbrella before. But obviously he lost his job for a reason, right? And the idea that Morgan Riley just slots back in there, who knows? Maybe it's Ekman Larson. Maybe you find another forward. Although I'm not sure there's anybody that really fits the bill to be the point man of a 5 forward, amalgamation like they used so often last year. So Yeah, the power play is a concern. Like, there's going to need to be some adjustments there if you're losing the guy who was, the quarterback of the whole thing, and that's going to be on the coaching staff to figure out. But you're right. Beyond that, the 5-on-5 stuff and being line mates with Austin Matthews and being Austin Matthews' number one setup man, how do you fill that hole, Jim? That's tougher to do, and you're probably not even going to do it, no matter who you trade for, no matter what move you make from here to the season opener or from the season opener to the trade deadline. You're not getting an equivalent player. You got to you sort of hope you can do it by committee. You sort of hope you can do it, by a change in chemistry, which is a lot harder to quantify, but sometimes does happen when you lose a guy out of the room, that suddenly it just changes the dynamic somehow, and maybe for the better. Hey, maybe it'll be for the worse. We'll find out. That's what makes this team really interesting next year.
That's the guarantee. We're going to find out.
Yeah,
There's no way around that.
And we'll be watching really closely. But
yeah.
Look, it could be our 605 guest that overachieves,
Could be.
shows up at training camp, announces himself as, hey, I'm not just a great junior player. I'm ready to go at the top level right now. Maybe Easton Cowan says to the world, hang on here. You need a top six forward. I'm that guy. Now, what's the likelihood of that happening? What are the odds that Easton Cowan announces himself as a top six forward and actually can follow through on that and play at that level for an entire NHL season as a rookie? Probably not that high, right?
Well, yeah, but, I don't know what the expectations were for Nyes when he first showed up. If you could get something like that over the next 2 years, to be able to trade all those draft picks away and still have a Nyes, Easton Cowan daily double, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it could be great.
Yeah.
Although, as we've pointed out many times on this show, maybe Cowan's the guy you trade because he's your number one asset right now.
We'll do that at 6:30.
We're not going to talk about that.
He's on at 6:05.
Yeah, you're right. We'll talk about that at 6:30.
That's a topic for 6:30. Yeah. So what happened in Leafland today? Michelli was introduced to the media, and he admitted, and I think this was available on the weekend too, that he was telling his agent that Toronto was where he wanted to play, and he will.
Toronto was one of the teams who showed most interest, so I was definitely right from the start. I told my agent that I would love to play for the Leafs.
So this is another opportunity. We don't know where this goes, but he's got to refine his game. He was lights out for 2 years, and last year is a bit of a drop-off with Phoenix/Utah. So, and who's to say? Sometimes a change of scenery will do that, a recast. He's not on the same line, so that's got to help, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe you're buying low on a guy that still has it in him, as he said today. I mean, he has been a 60-point guy, 57-point guy at his height, a 40-assist guy at his height. He's a natural playmaker. So you're losing playmaking in Mitch Marner. Maybe you get it back, some of it, a portion of it in Matthias Michelli. I mean, he's only 24 years old. I mean, There's plenty of room there for him to grow.
Change of scenery might be the agenda.
Yeah,
Could be.
And you don't know how guys are going to react when when you got a guy that played in Arizona and Utah. I mean, you don't know how he's going to react when he gets to a market where people are actually watching, and people are they're actually saying his name on a regular basis. They're actually noting on a daily basis how he did publicly, because I don't think that happens to guys that play in a lot of franchises in this league, and he's either going to love it or he's going to hate it.
That's just going to go there. You either love that and you relish it, or you absolutely despise it and can't deal with it. Zach Hyman had his charity golf tournament and obviously didn't get in the Stanley Cup final because of a wrist problem, and he was asked about the possibility of everything being okay for opening night in the fall.
You still hoping to be available for the start of next season?
Yeah. I don't even know what the timeline is, to be honest, but that's definitely not out of the question. So I haven't set a date or anything like that. I've dealt with it with the ACL. Once you set a date, you get disappointed if you don't play on that date. So I hope to play on opening night. I don't know if I will. We'll see.
Boy, they missed him, didn't they?
Massive loss. And look, let's hope Zach Hyman comes back healthy. He's been through, as he pointed out there, he's been through a catastrophic injury before with the ACL repair.
Yep.
This doesn't sound like it's quite as, quite potentially career-altering as any sort of knee injury. But look, wrists are very, very finicky. I've dealt with, doctors who work exclusively on the wrist and the hand, and you do surgery in that area, it can be very, very finicky. There's a lot of nerves. There's a lot a lot of moving parts in there. So they do take it slow on the rehab because you got to make sure that that thing is 100% repaired. You do not want lingering wrist injuries. That could really hamper you.
So, Dave, at some point, at 5:05, Steve Phillips will be by, and 6:30, former Blue Jay Eric Kratz will be by. We're going to talk about the Jays. I like to play this game. What did I see? So let's go back to the weekend, which was almost a walk-off weekend until yesterday. And so I'm trying to figure out what the better story is. The fact that everybody participates, the fact that the week started with like a Bombers club with home runs all over the place, and then you have 3 games against the Angels, which are squeakers. You've got the sack bunt, which was invaluable in 2 games.
Yeah.
And then you've got people that are everybody's contributing. At Estrada, we were talking about him being called up on Friday, and he pitched 4 really good innings on Saturday. I mean, this is mass participation. And I think really the real story, and we'll get into that with our insiders, is the pitching. So I did some numbers in my prep time earlier today. The starting pitching over 3 games, 15.2 innings, 15 hits, and 6 runs over 3 games. Not bad. The bullpen over the same 3 games, 14 1/3 innings, 6 hits, and 2 runs. That bullpen was unbelievable.
You're the hottest team in baseball for a reason, right? And
so many reasons, though.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not a reason. It is many reasons. It is an incredible job by it. Like how many times were we saying about this franchise they lack depth?
Oh,
how many times were we saying they didn't have enough pitching? How many times were we saying they didn't have enough power hitting? They didn't have enough kind of situational hitting. Last season, the story was they couldn't hit with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, that went on for a couple of years.
Basically, take every criticism that has been lobbed at the Blue Jays over the past handful of years, and even for the past couple months of this season. For the first couple months of this season, take all those criticisms, and they've turned them all on their head, essentially.
Every one of them. Yeah. And the one I like is the mass participation and the depth. You got people that are called up from Buffalo and make an immediate impact. Estrada leading the way, as I said. But literally, I mean, we talked about the Hoffman on Friday. Hoffman and Fisher both pitched 5 times last week, and we're pretty close to flawless.
Yeah, just incredible. I mean, it's just couldn't ask for more from this team. I mean, 8 wins in a row. You've got the 3-game lead now in the American League East. And I think more importantly, Jim, you sort of you've just recast the narrative about your team.
Oh, totally.
You've recast the feeling about your team. It's almost now unfathomable that they're not going to be a factor in late August and into September, right? Like they've put themselves in such a position now where, 14 games over 500, you're going to have your ups and downs. The win streak doesn't last forever. There will be regression here. But even when you get your regression, your inevitable regression, you've made enough hay here that now we can really start talking about, what are they going to do with the deadline, which is 24 days away now. What are they going to do after the deadline in terms of, can they win this division? What kind of wild card spot are they going to have? And then how do you sort of optimize yourself to finally get that long awaited playoff win that they haven't gotten for so many years?
So 52 wins. The Tigers have 57 and have been lights out since the opening pitch of the season. So they're only 5 behind them. This is great because you don't know where the falter is. Our insiders will tell us how legitimate this is. But in the meantime, we're all having fun here. They start in Chicago tonight and finish after a day off Thursday in Oakland. So road trip into the All-Star break. Barrios tonight. And, literally, I would never say this, but based on the 8 straight wins, I don't see them losing much until the All-Star break. And then that's being sort of, I could see them winning everything, but I don't want to go there. Time and scheduling sort of creates a loss here or there, but they should idle into that All-Star break in pretty good shape.
Well, we were talking with Rich Griffin on Friday on this very show, Jim, talking about now watch out. The Angels may not be a powerhouse, but you don't want to have a letdown against that team, right? And guess what? They didn't. I mean, as much as maybe you would have predicted it. It's remarkable that they didn't, and good on the Blue Jays for keeping it going.
So when we come back, we're going to talk hockey. Marty Biron will be with us. He could tell us about the Sabres going to arbitration. Biron didn't want to go to arbitration, but the Sabres will take him there. So there's no, what am I looking for? What's that?
Offer sheet.
Offer sheet. Thank you. No offer sheet there. But there's a lot of talk about the Sabres moving things around. great collection of young talent, but the chemistry isn't there, and that's why they haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. So we'll explore that next. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, yes, guy, bouncy intro music. Gotta love that. Jim Taddy Dave Feschuk with you today and all week. Al's brother will make guest appearances throughout the course of the week, but for the most part, it's us too, the duration show. We flog each other into the ground, and then if there's something left, Doogie comes in with his cologne and spices things up.
Oh, man. Yeah, Doog won't be joining us today, but later in the week.
That's right.
But you see, Doogie got a big product placement on FanDuel Sports app today.
Oh.
Beautiful stuff. Like, Doogie is front and center with his parlays on FanDuel. The guy's he's a brand.
He is a brand.
It's a big brand.
Yes. And that's a nice way of saying it. Hey, you big brand, you. Anyway, OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Let's get back to hockey. Marty Biron is here, our TSN hockey analyst, among other things, of course, big member of the Sabres family. Martin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're looking for the replacement for Mitch Marner. How do we do that? Help us out here. We got this guy with 100+ points, 50% of what Austin Matthews does. Great penalty killer, great in the power play. Sounds like 4 guys to me.
Yeah, it sounds like 4 guys to me as well. Now, if I would be looking for a Mitch Marner replacement right now, it won't happen. You have to think that this will be an in-season addition, and more like February, going into the trade deadline, you're going to say, okay, where can we find somebody that's going to come in and give us what Mitch Marner was giving us earlier? And plus, you have to identify within your team and your forward group, where's Matthew Nyes at, and how is Austin Matthews? Is Matthews able to continue to perform and produce without Marner? Where is John Tavares? Last year, 38 goals. Where is it going to be this year? So I think there's a lot of big question marks, but you're not replacing Mitch right now, and you shouldn't have to do that right now either. I think Toronto is a really good team. They're a team that's going to make the playoffs. So wait a little bit, buy some time, accrue some salary cap space, and then make a move later in the season.
Marty, when you look at their goaltending situation, there's been some talk in town that if they were needing to make a trade for a top 6 forward, maybe they could trade from a position of strength in goal, because you got Stolarz, you got Wall. If you wanted to run with one and not the other, trade the other, you could do that. Now, I'm not a big fan of it. How would you feel about moving on from one of those guys, selling high on one of those guys, and relying on your organizational depth to carry you beyond that?
Well, I mean, I suggested that a few weeks back, right? Even like just after the season ended, saying, look, this may be the summer to do it, but it's a little too late now when you're looking at the teams that have filled up some of their goalie needs, the goalies that were either acquired, like John Gibson to Detroit, or, free agent goaltenders, which was not like a great class of free agents, but still, there's some goalies that have filled up needs, and they're going to reevaluate later in the season. And look, Colorado last year, in season, revamped their crease. They looked at San Jose and they said, you guys aren't going anywhere. How about Mackenzie Blackwood? They looked at Nashville. You guys aren't going anywhere. How about your backup, right, Scott Wedgwood? And they just changed their whole crease. Now, Toronto could look in November and December and say, which team is really struggling in their crease situation, and which guy do we feel we can part ways with? And
I think we lost him. Oh, well, we'll get him back. Marty Biron, he was going down an interesting road there, and you suggested that just sort of as you launch into the season, just because of the weird marketplace. There's a lot of people that need goalies.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that need players, but the supply is down.
The supply of proven guys that you can actually rely on. I mean, I look, I was going to ask him in a follow-up about Edmonton. Like,
yeah,
do you really believe? I know they've been to the Cup final twice in a row, and that's impressive in a certain way, but they've also had moments in those Cup finals where they've been let down by goaltending.
Well, did you go back with Skinner again? Okay, let's bring Marty's back in. So, Marty, just pick up where you were. We're talking about maybe the goaltending thing is something you look at as the season launches.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you'd have to look, and right now you're not dealing with from a position of strength. Teams have filled up their needs. But in late October, November, by December, you may be looking around and saying, okay, first of all, I mentioned Wall because I think Stolarz is the better of the two goalies right now. But you have to see, where is Anthony Stolarz health-wise? He was banged up last year. He didn't finish the season in the playoffs. He was backing up the last game. But you have to evaluate everything and see if there's a possibility. But I do believe that in November, maybe early December, you may gain that position of strength again when there's teams that are going to say, oh, we really need a goaltender. And I heard you guys just mention the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, maybe it is the Oilers saying, we can't continue with Skinner and Pickard. We have to go get somebody. And at that moment, maybe the phone is going to ring with the Leafs, and they're going to need to look to one of their.
I believe we lost him again. Wow. That doesn't happen often. But nonetheless, he was making a good point. You buy some time because they have it. And then all of a sudden somebody gets a little more desperate and maybe the price goes, well, the price will go up.
Yeah, it's a dicey one for me. Like I've batted this one around a handful of times about whether you could trade one of.
I'd just be afraid to because they took so long to get there.
It took a long time to get there, Jim. You're right. And they've both had, a really well-documented history of pretty regular injuries. Like these guys have not had really long runs of healthy play, right? Like,
well, I think that anybody with any kind of doubt would suggest to you the moment you trade one, in the next game, the guy that you kept gets injured.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be?
That would make total sense. I mean, we've seen that.
Yeah. It would be concerning, right? And
what a break for Dennis Hill to be.
Yeah, it would be exactly. But it's and they got Akhtimov and Hill to be. They got some guys they seem to believe will possibly become NHL goaltenders, but that possibly is a big word. And you've got two guys here that are proven, right? Like Wall and Stolarz have shown you at their best they can be elite to near elite guys, right? As long as they can stay healthy. Now, we don't know what kind of workload either one can take because we just saw last year where they both had unprecedented types of workloads. And what do you know? Stolarz got hurt. Yeah, you could blame Sam Bennett for that. I mean, I would. but he also had, he's had other nicks and cuts throughout the years, as has Joseph Wall. So it's tough. I mean, right now, to have those guys under contract for $6 million for the pair for the year.
Pretty good.
It's a great deal. Now, Stolarz is going to get more expensive because his deal's up at the end of next year. They're going to have to extend him. You would assume probably, he's at a $2.5 million cap hit. You assume this guy's getting a raise times 2, basically.
Okay, my fingers are crossed now. We're going to bring Marty back in yet again.
Fingers are crossed over here too, guys. I don't want to be cutting out.
It might be a tariff thing. I don't know. So let's talk about your blue liner in Buffalo, Bowen Byram. I mean, what's happened? There's all kinds of trade talk, and they're going to arbitration, which doesn't really, I guess, take away the trade talk because maybe they don't like what the arbitrator says. What do you think happens?
Well, here's an interesting situation because I think that, again, if you were to deal from a position of power, it would have been 2 weeks ago, right, at the draft. Maybe you acquire a player. Maybe it's a pick from that draft. Maybe you flip that around. The Sabres already had moved J.J. Peterka to Utah. So I think that was the time. Right now, so Bo Byram decided not to go to arbitration because I believe he wanted the leverage of an offer sheet in his back pocket. And then yesterday by 5 p.m., the Sabres had to decide if they were going to take him to arbitration. The team elected arbitration, which they did. So now it guarantees Bo Byram will either be signed with the Sabres, signed with a different team, or traded or whatnot, but he will be in uniform game 1 somewhere. And I think that's good for the Sabres because, number one, if Byram is signed, I think you got a very good blue line. With Dahlin, Byram, Power, they acquired Kesselring. They acquired Connor Timmins to play, third pair with Samuelson. I think with Byram, their blue line would be really, really strong. If you don't have Bo Byram, where do you trade him and what do you get in return? That is the big question. And I don't know right now that the best return is out there. I think 2 weeks ago it would have been there if, there was, some good options on the table. But they really like Bo Byram, and he played really well with Rasmus Dahlin last year. So why force something if you don't have to? Right now, you know that at worst, Bo Byram is signed to a 1-year deal in arbitration and will be there game 1. So that's the worst case scenario, and that's not a bad thing for the Sabres.
You got Darlene at 11, Owen Power at 8.3. I got to believe that Byram is somewhere in between. Would that make sense?
No, I don't think so. Byram
Yeah.
had like 38 points last year, I think, or 7 goals, or he doesn't play power play. I think when you go to an arbitrator and you're going to show all the numbers, the ice time and everything, I believe it probably will slot in between 6 and 7. That's kind of like what I think. A lot of the analytics projection, we're saying a 1-year deal somewhere in the 5.5 to 6, but I think it may be more than that. Now, if you go long term, you're probably pushing closer to $8 million, and I think that's where the holdup is, because the Sabres have Darlene at 11 and Power at 8.5. So Bo Byram is saying, do I have the ability to continue to grow in Buffalo, because I don't have a spot on the power play. Those are the two, studs. So I think that's maybe where the holdup is. But I think Byram on a 1-year deal somewhere between like $6.5 and $7 million would probably be the tops I think you could get.
Marty, there was a lot of talk in Toronto last week about a little stunt the Maple Leafs developmental team pulled. They brought the developmental camp players down to a horse barn at the X here in Toronto, and they had them spend some time with a horse trainer and a young colt that this horse trainer was attempting to train. And I guess the idea, according to Haley Wickenheiser, the assistant GM, in charge of development for the Leafs, was that this would help the players sort of think about controlling their emotions and learning how to manage themselves under pressure through the eyes of this horse trainer who's attempting to tame this wild colt. A, what do you think of that? And B, did you have anything like that happen in your career where a team got creative with how they sort of attempted to mold you as a player?
Yeah, I remember going to Whistler with the Philadelphia Flyers at the start of the season. So we played Edmonton and Calgary game 1 and 2, and then we had 4 days before the game in Vancouver. So we all went to Whistler. That was 2007, 2008. A lot of new guys on the team, and we had the team bonding experience. They brought in a firm, to do a bunch of different puzzles and outdoor activities and, figuring out working as a team. And throughout the whole year, we used examples of that, as John Stevens, our head coach at the time, would always say the process. You have to stick to the process. And remember when we were in Whistler, the process. And it was great. I loved it. I'm a sucker for all of that. But I laughed when the Leafs did the thing with the horses, because I have horses myself. Like my kids, my girls have all grown up in the horse industry. My daughter last year went to South Africa competing in the World Cup of saddle seat equestrian. And listen, there's sometimes we had gotten her a horse, and man, it was going to be so beautiful, and they didn't fit, right? It didn't work. And then we sold that, bought another one, and we're like, this one's not going to work. And boom, it just magically happened. And I love that, talking to trainers in our industry of the Morgans and the saddlebred and the saddle seat world. It's been fantastic to learn how they train. And I try to use that and many different, sports analogy when I talk to my young goalies and I give them, different training ideas because you have to learn. I've been watching a lot of tennis. Watch from the tennis players and their warm-up and their mental approach. Baseball, football, hockey, equestrian, track and field, whatever. I think it's important to be able to dive into a lot of different things.
I like what you said there, because you never once quoted anybody in hockey, so you're looking outside of the hockey rink to figure out different things to motivate and maybe little ideas or theories that you could apply to yourself.
Well, and it's important. Like I know, I watch some of the trainers that we've dealt with, and some of them are young and full of energy, and they work until 1 in the morning, and they get up at 4 the next morning to work the horses again. Some are more older and established, and they've figured out ways. And sometimes you got a horse where you got to spend so much time and energy, and you got to ride them 2-3 times a day and long line them and do all of that. And sometimes it's just get them out, one turn around each way, and then you're good. And it's so interesting to me that they did that with the young players to give them, animals are like humans. you know, not two of them are identical. Not two of them are going to have to do the same thing. And you have all these, you know, 30, 40 kids at development camp, and you have to let them know that, you know, we're going to work with you. We know that you're not like, you know, Joe and Bill and Mike next to you. You're an individual. You're unique. And just like they're working with horses, we're going to work with you in how individual and unique you are. I think that's fantastic.
Well, that's interesting stuff, Marty. We had Bruce Boudreau on last week, and we talked about it. And he thought it was the dumbest idea he'd ever heard. So everybody's got a different take on things.
So old school. I love Bruce, and he's awesome. But it's to me, you know, I've had a chance to encounter, like when I was in Philly, I lived next to a baseball player for the Phillies, and I got to see his routine. And, you know, how early he showed up to batting practice, and they played every day, right? And 162 games. And I'm, you know, watching the Jays now and how they have to do it over and over again. And I'm like, man, don't tell me I can't play back-to-back games as a goaltender. Like, I'm watching these baseball players do it, like, all the time. I'm like, no. So I think there's a lot of that mentality that we can be adopting for sure in hockey.
Well, talking about goaltenders, Marty, there's a lot of talk about Stolarz. Obviously, he's in the last year of his deal with the Leafs at a really reasonable $2.5 million cap hit. There's a widely assumed, trope that he's going to get an extension. It's just about the number and the term. You look at Stolarz, you've seen him play. You saw him have an incredible year for the Maple Leafs last year, and you also saw him get hurt in the playoffs. You know, what would you be comfortable with if you had to get into that executive suite and make that deal with Anthony Stolarz?
So when I look at Anthony Stolarz, I see the full package: the size, the athleticism, the quickness, the reaction. I think this is a guy that wherever he's been, there was always good indication that he could be good, but there was always roadblocks, right? In every organization, there was either it didn't work out perfectly or there was somebody else there. And in Toronto, I think those roadblocks kind of opened up in front of him, and he was able to go ahead. So for me, if I'm the Leafs, obviously I'm trying to manage the cap. Like, do I really think Anthony Stolarz in the $5 to $5.5 million range is going to say no? Like, this is a guy that until last year was a backup goaltender. Like, if I say, okay, we'll give you a 4-year deal at 5.5 because you're our number one. And look, this is still not clear. Like, by the end of this year, maybe it's Joe Wall, and unfortunately Stolarz is not their number one. But if we continue the way that it's been last year, I'm thinking Stolarz could be their number one. He's not going to say no to that. He's not going to say, I want 6.5, I want 7. Like, he's got maybe 20, million or whatever, 4 times 5 on the table. I mean, that's more than he's made his whole career. So I don't think he would say no to that or say no to somewhere there. I get agents get in the way and say, oh, we can get this and that, whatever. But there's only 32 teams. There's only 32 number one goaltenders. When you have one of those chairs, you don't want to give it up.
Yeah, Wall's at 3.66. I mean, even if you gave him 5.5 or 6, that's still pretty good money for 2 goaltenders. You'd be at 9.5 for both. That's pretty good. I think this story is until the contract is signed is going to be the major headline. What do you think Edmonton does with Connor McDavid? Where does that go?
Oh man, I feel bad for the Oilers because this summer, the first week of July, it could not have gone any worse, right? They have to trade Evander Kane. They lose Connor Brown. They look like they've not been able to add any of the depth that they would have wanted. And it started maybe last year when they lost Holloway and Broberg, but this has not been good. So I think Connor McDavid will stay in Edmonton. The big thing for me is I don't think he would stay for much longer than a 2 or a 3-year deal. Like, Connor is still, in the prime and will be in the prime of his career for the next 8-9 years. But he doesn't want to give that up and say all of a sudden, I have no control over that. So for me, I think Connor McDavid will stay an Oiler, but will probably sign a 2 or 3-year deal and say, okay, in 3 years, if it doesn't go the way I want, or if it doesn't go the way that we want it as a team, then have the option to just go somewhere else and chase a cup. Because we all know, I mean, I remember my first full year with the Buffalo Sabres. Had a couple of guys in the locker room sitting next to them, and they're like, Marty, I tell you, it goes fast. You think you're going to win a Stanley Cup in your first year, and you're in your last year, and you still haven't gotten a chance to win it. It goes fast. If you're Connor McDavid, you give yourself a little bit of time here with the Oilers, but after 2-3 years, if it's not happening, you're probably going somewhere else.
What do you think the number is? If he goes, like we had MJ on, Marty, and MJ was sort of making a case, sort of pretending he was McDavid's agent, saying, give me 2 years at $16 million a year, and I'll put you on the clock to make this team a contender, and then we'll talk in a couple of years. What do you think is the reasonable cap hit if he goes 2 or 3 years?
So next year the cap will be 103.5 or somewhere around that. So the maximum salary that he could make would be $20 million, right? Like 20%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like 20%. So it's not going to be $20 million, but I also don't think it will be 16. I have a number. I think $18 million is probably the number for Connor McDavid. I get it that maybe he says, okay, let's go to 16 so you have $2 more million to play with and bring in somebody, because he'll make it, right? He'll make it on another contract. He can go and chase the money. But at some point, you're going to say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm worth 8. He's worth 20. He's worth 20. Like, how much less are you going to take? I think 18 is the number, but I wouldn't be surprised if Connor McDavid does the Oilers a solid and says, I'll go to 16 on a 2-year deal. But that's coming with strings attached, that in 2 years, if it's not good, it's bye-bye and I'm gone.
Wow. Marty, you can uncross your fingers now. Everything's good. Thanks very much.
Okay, good. Thank you. Have a good one.
Oh, you too. Marty Biron, TSN hockey analyst. You know what? I mean, that whole that McDavid thing, when you think of it, I don't see that as a situation where the player should compromise. I mean, he's the best in the business.
Well,
if he can't make 18 or 20 or, nobody's going to argue with what he's doing on the ice. If he can't do that, nobody can.
Look, you're right. I mean, to a degree, I see where you're coming from. Except this is not the NBA where you can exceed the salary cap to sign your own players. This is the NHL,
a hard cap. Right.
Where when you take that extra couple million or that extra 3 or 4 million, whatever. Yeah, if his max is 20.6 or whatever it is, under $103 million salary cap. So the max is 20.6. How many, he's never taken the max to this point.
No.
Right?
But all I'm saying is, like, maybe not on the dollar figure. I think a 2-year deal is really good for both. But I don't see one of those, I guess, I don't know when the new CBA kicks in, but I guess if it kicks in a year September, that next July 1st, it would still be the old CBA. You could do 8 years. I don't see him doing that at a friendly number. I think that would be ridiculous. I
mean, hey, who knows? He's done 8 years before. He could do it again. I wouldn't put it past him. A lot of players love the security and the lack of hassle. It's like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Some guys get stressed about these contract situations to the point where they're like, I've heard players say, look, I don't want to go through that again. Like, I want to push that as far down the road as possible. I don't want to be in that room again. I don't want my agent calling me every 5 minutes telling me the updates. I just want to play hockey and make my money. But, Jim, to the point of, what can he make and what should he make? Yeah, he could make the 20%. He could demand the maximum salary of 20%. But the last time he signed for 15.7% of the cap on that deal that currently pays him $12.5 million. Now, there was all that talk at the time that he'd give him back some money on that deal. Right. Yeah. So
I'm just thinking that, for an entire sport, and that's what he represents, for an entire league to not have somebody at the max doesn't make a lot of sense. Because all the other sports do.
Makes sense to the owners, and they're all snickering, saying, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
We make these guys feel bad when they make money.
Oh, yeah.
How about that? How's that? That's why Gary Bettman's in the Hall of Fame, Jim. The players feel bad when they take more money.
I still remember the old days when they used to say, protect us from ourselves.
Yeah.
Please.
For sure.
The new CBA.
Yeah, before the cap, for sure. When the Mike Ilitches of the world were spending all kinds of money to build the Detroit Red Wings into a dynasty, or try to at least, and the Maple Leafs had their war chest where they'd pay guys whatever they wanted. Not to much effect, although they got close a couple of times. But, yeah, it's that is the beauty if you're an owner of the NHL CBA. It's just that every time a guy takes some money out of the pie that exists for every team, he's stealing from somebody else. So like that's money another guy can't get in that same dressing room, and it can cause problems as we've seen in Toronto.
Yes, it can. Coming up next, something to chew on, and that'll be what is the priority for the Blue Jays management going into the MLB trade deadline. So we've got some options here. We'll explore that. And, of course, at the top of the hour, baseball insider Steve Phillips will stop by to join all of us on OverDrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, nice bouncy bassy drum roll to get us back into the final segment of the first hour in Overdrive. Jim Taddy and Dave Feschuk all day today. Just before I get into something to chew on, Blue Jays' George Springer has been named American League Player of the Week. And from basketball, Tyrese Halliburton will miss the entirety of next season with that Achilles tear. Ouch.
Such a shame. That's a tough one to watch, right?
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, but not surprising. I think it was widely assumed that coming off a torn ACL, the idea of you getting back early, it's not going to happen in the NBA. We saw Aaron Rodgers get back in something less than a year to the NFL, but basketball puts such a strain on the Achilles. And,
big pounding.
Yeah, it's tough. But you know what? I mean, look, injuries are part of the game, and Jim, I just think it's another reason why the East is wide open.
Yeah,
there's opportunity there for somebody to seize it. Nobody saw Indiana being the team that was going to seize it this year.
Could it be the Raptors? Could it be the
Raptors is the question we have to ask. And if you're an optimist, I mean, there's so little that we know about this team and what they can be because we've never really seen them play together.
No.
Why not just leave the mystery open in a positive way and say maybe?
That's something to chew on for another day, but something to chew on today is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP when you get an entree, a side, and a drink, and you'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for the $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. So, what is the priority for Blue Jays management ahead of the MLB deadline? Is it a starting arm, a bullpen pitcher, a power bat? Which one of the three would you go with?
Can I say yes?
Yeah.
Well, yes, and yes?
Yes guy, yes guy, yes guy.
Yes guy, yes guy, yes guy. But look, I mean, to me, it always starts with the starters. Right?
Oh, really?
I mean, to me, it does because you look at it right now, you essentially have three guys you can count on in Gausman, Barrios, and Chris Bassett. And then beyond that, what are you going to get from Max Scherzer down the stretch here? You're not sure. I mean, you hope you get a guy who turns back the clock and future Hall of Famer that continues to give you great starts, but you can't be sure of it given the problems he's had with his thumb and various other injuries, into his 40s. And then, Eric Lauer, it feels like you've been stealing a little bit with Eric Lauer being a guy you can count on, and you have been able to count on him. But the idea that this guy is just going to continue to do what he's doing, you'll take it for sure if he does. But, you would like some insurance on that front. You don't know what you're going to get from Alek Manoah if he comes back.
Yeah.
If, there's a lot of optimism that he might. And he could be a factor. But, to me, like the starting arm is got to be a big factor there. I mean, Bowden Francis is also hurt. Could be a factor, may not be. Who knows? So I think the arm is where you begin.
So I'm going to disagree with you because the wording is, what is the priority? I think you're going to get a starting arm anyway. I think there's one out there if you really want it. And it's hard for me to want a bullpen pitcher, but you could always have another one, but the bullpen has been excellent. So, it's hard to, based on what we've seen over the last 8 games, you don't want to touch anything.
Yeah.
But, you have to sort of project how this works out. I like the bullpen. I think I would go with the power bat.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, you could say that makes some sense because you've been getting power despite the fact you haven't had Santander playing a role in this great surge. Basically, it's been since the moment Santander went on to the IL, DL, whatever you want to call it, that you've had this incredible stretch run of AL East commanding wins. And the idea that you felt you needed Santander when you acquired him. Yeah. You don't have him. I think the logic should hold that you need somebody to take that place, even though you've had guys step in, and we've talked about the by-committee approach here where there's been so many different heroes and so many different nights that have been able to contribute. But I'm with you. Like it would be nice to be able to assuming you're not going to get much from Santander this year, that this is a lost year for Santander.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes when a guy moves and signs a big contract, it takes a year to sort of iron that out or figure it out. As I say, though, I think they need one of each, but I think you can naturally add a starting arm and a bullpen pitcher because they're around. And I'm pretty sure they have the assets to do all of this. I think I would like one of each. But I would focus on the power bat.
Yeah. I mean, hey, maybe you'll be thinking less about the power bat if the guy you just paid $500 million starts hitting like a power hitter instead of a singles hitter.
Yeah.
But I find it kind of funny, like when you think about the year that, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is having. I mean, it's not horrendous. It's 823 OPS. He's got 12 home runs. he's had similar years where he's had 12, around 12 at this time of year, and then ended up in the 30s. But imagine if this team wasn't winning. Imagine if this team wasn't on the surge it's on right now, Jim, and they were more like the team that we saw in the first couple of months of the year, extended. I mean, I think we'd be a little harder on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and his lack of power to this point of the season, because 12 home runs, there's nothing wrong with that, except if you're a $500 million man.
We'll explore that next. OverDrive, TSN 2, TSN 1050.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Hour number 2, OverDrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2. Jim Taddy and Dave Feshek from the Toronto Star with you all afternoon. Very shortly, Steve Phillips will join us to dive into some baseball. So the Jays are in Chicago tonight. Barrios goes for Toronto. 3 games there, break Thursday, and then 3 games at Oakland. So that's 6 games into the All-Star break, and sitting pretty good. First place, 3 points over the Yankees and Rays. Just looking at the run differential, only plus 12. But I guess the mark against the team is the away record, 20-22. Not good.
No, and you don't want to get too overconfident against the Chicago White Sox, as bad as they are, because the last time the Blue Jays lost a series was to the Chicago White Sox at home, right?
Yeah.
They lost 2 of 3 from the White Sox back in June. So, man, you're right. They haven't been great on the road, and they haven't been great taking care of business against the White Sox. So, yeah, you'd like to think they could run this 8-game win streak into a 14-gamer heading into the All-Star break, given the fact you're playing 2 of the worst teams in baseball in the White Sox and the Athletics. But you start thinking that way, maybe it doesn't happen.
Yeah, just looking at, so Oakland is 37-55, 16-29 at home. Chicago is 30-60, and they are 19-24 at home. So there's a good recipe there. I mean, I don't know that they take all 6.
Should be.
I don't know they take all 6, but it easily talked into 4 or 5.
Yeah,
easily.
I mean, easily.
Yeah,
sure. Look, on the other side of it, the White Sox and Athletics, as bad as they are, they still won a combined 67 games. They win every now and then, right? They win they win 1 out of 3.
I know, but look at this. The run differential, Oakland's minus 140.
I know,
That's dreadful.
So bad.
And Chicago's minus 84, so that's minus, 224?
Well, and Chicago actually at home is decent. Like, they're only 5 games under 500 at home.
Yeah.
So you can't take them too lightly as you head in there beginning tonight. But, man, it feels like the Blue Jays just can't miss right now. Like, it's just
such a fun story to watch, because it's a different. It's like watching the same movie with a different ending. Well, no, the same ending, but different plot every night.
Every night.
Yeah,
something seems to work out in their favor. They make the big play. They make the big sacrifice bunt. They have the big 14 pitch at bat that leads to something good. There's been so many of those storylines of just key moments where you come up with the big play, and the beauty of it for the Blue Jays is it's been the opposite for the Yankees, right? As they've sort of struggled as the Jays have prospered here and opened up this 3-game lead. Like, your main rival to win this division, the New York Yankees, is doesn't feel the magic right now. It's kind of going sideways for the Yankees, which is a nice kind of parallel storyline as you're on the best streak you've had in many a decade.
So you sort of got into this earlier. You were saying that one of the best things about this team is the inability to drive in runs, which has plagued the team, I want to say, for almost 2.5 years, evaporated seemingly overnight. Is that your best storyline of all this?
Well, it's got to be up there, right? Because we spent the whole, how many times did we have that conversation? Ross Atkins himself brought it up, late last year, talking about how, maybe the approach with runners in scoring position wasn't right. Maybe their own players felt pressure with runners in scoring position, which was not a good sign, right? If you're sort of questioning the composure of your hitters with runner in scoring position as the sort of de facto explanation for why you weren't producing, nobody liked the sound of that.
No.
And it just hasn't been a problem this year for whatever reason. It's just whatever the problem was last year, it just seems to have evaporated this year.
It's kind of inspirational because, there are some changes, but nothing catastrophic. In fact, last year, I think you would say at the deadline, they liquidated some talent and brought in some maybes who have turned out in some respects. But the fact that they could do it sort of within is maybe something to take note of as well.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. That's the beauty of it. It hasn't been the guys they brought in that have been the saviors here. It's been guys that nobody expected to be saviors. Like Addison Barger didn't make this team out of spring training, and look what he's done for them. You talk about the need for a power bat. Well, you'd need it a lot more if he wasn't around.
That's right.
Right, that we'd be talking a lot louder about the need for a power bat if he wasn't around. Bam Bam has been a big plus for the Blue Jays.
And guys like Bichette yesterday, you saw both sides of that, bobbled an infield ball, and then as he got up to the plate the next time, just popped one out of the ballpark.
Yeah, exactly. Like making up for a mistake and, kind of, picking up your teammates when they make a mistake. It's been a big part of this team. There's just the chemistry just seems different this year, right? Like that to me is, remember when Alex Anthopoulos was here and they made that incredible run during the latter days of his general manager's stint here. And he kind of talked about how, as an analytics guy, he wasn't always kind of sold on chemistry. Like he was more of a numbers guy. He was like, yeah, you build the team and you find the roles you need to define the roles and fill the roles and you'll be fine. But that team kind of made him believe that team that made that first playoff run there made him believe chemistry matters. Like there's something that you can't put a number on. You can't use an analytics algorithm on that just makes a team work and makes a team play better. And it's the contagiousness of, enthusiasm, the contagiousness of good hitting, the contagiousness of good, sort of good attitudes and good approaches. All that stuff, good luck going, to your analytics department, the guys in the khakis and the pocket protectors and saying, put a number on that for me. But it exists, right? When you see it in action.
Yeah, it's a little different than other sports. I almost sort of explain it this way. It's chemistry in terms of performance playing off performance.
Right. Yeah,
sense?
Exactly. Because it is ultimately that's the beauty of baseball as an analytics sport. It's a head-to-head matchup sport, right? You can quantify that very easily. When you're at the plate, there's nobody to help you. When you're on the mound, there's nobody to help you. I guess a catcher does help you to some degree. But you've got to throw the pitches, and as a batter, you got to make the swings. But you're right. How do you quantify the fact that when one guy's hitting, another guy hits better? When one guy's picking somebody up when he makes a mistake, that makes that guy play better in recompense. I mean, there's something to it, man, and it just feels like this team has it, right? At least right now.
Yeah.
And look, it's got to go on longer. It's got to happen in as the summer wears on here into August and then into September. And then obviously you got to be playing your best baseball beyond that. If you want to actually do the damage you're hoping to do here, win the American League, represent the American League in the World Series. And why can't it happen this year? There's no juggernaut at the top of the standings that you're afraid of.
Not anymore. And there's just some great storylines. Kirk going to the All-Star game is just a fantastic storyline.
Oh, it's great. It's really great for him. I mean, we had Rich Griffin on last week. He called him Alejandro Kirk, the Blue Jays MVP to date, which, when you think about it,
yep.
I think Griff's logic is essentially, look, I mean, George Springer has been their best offensive player by a lot of metrics. Obviously, if you just look at the raw numbers, the OPS is of it all. And you look at, okay, Springer's been their guy, but who's harder to replace, right? You can't find catchers doing what Alejandro Kirk is doing. And the Jays don't have another catcher that could do it. They've got other outfielders that can hit. They've got other outfielders that can take George Springer's place if he's out for a while, but maybe not to the same effect right now because George Springer's turned back the clock in a really fascinating way here when a lot of people thought he was washed up and kind of playing out the string of a great career. But, yeah, it's for Kirk to be doing what he's doing. I think it's well-deserved that he's heading to the All-Star game. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota Hotline is Steve Phillips. Steve, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So looking for context here, I mean, obviously the Jays are on a run here. What jumps off the page for you? I mean, what is surprising to you over their last, I want to say, 5 weeks, when before that they were just struggling as they had for the previous 2 years, but this is different now. What makes it that way?
Yeah, I think really it's and I dare say it, the internal improvements that have happened with the hitters in this organization, right? I mean, we kept hearing, we're going to have to get better internally. These guys are going to have to be better. It's not, the answer's not outside. It's these guys will be better, and we have to make them better, and we believe they're going to be better. And now you've got Ernie Clement, swinging the bat. You've got Addison Barger really swinging the bat. Alejandro Kirk is better. And, you're getting contributions from a broader list of players that's making it not come down to, Bichette and Guerrero and hopefully somebody on either side of them. And so, they've gotten late.
I think we lost him there. We're going to have to reestablish contact.
Seems to be a pattern, Jim.
Hope this isn't a regular thing. I'm going to have to double the invoice.
Very abrupt, it's not like a cell phone click or a cell phone cutout where you sort of hear them for a second and you don't hear them. That's just like somebody cutting the line.
The dropout.
Yeah. A dropout.
Yeah.
You don't want to have dropouts on a radio show generally.
No, it's nobody's fault. There's nothing we can do.
I like that, Lou. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah, Lou calls us out.
I think it probably is somebody's fault. Who should we blame? I'm not sure.
No, I don't know. But internal improvement is, at some point when he comes back, we'll figure this out. Maybe that's the way to go for a lot of things, because I just get the impression in a lot of sports, there's only so much changing you can do. I mean, sooner or later, you have to look yourself in the mirror and make the improvement. And maybe, to Brad Treliving's point about the DNA of the lease, maybe that's where you do that. So Steve, welcome back in. Our apologies for the technical problems. I don't know where we were, but maybe just talk about, again, the internal improvement and how difficult that is normally.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one that there were so many question marks. And look, I'm not completely sold that Ernie Clement is going to hit like this, that Addison Barger is going to hit like this, but they're hitting like that right now. And I think Springer bouncing back is a huge part of this, not only for his own production, but it allows him to really be more of a leader. And look, he's a leader anyways, but when you're not performing, it's really hard for you to believe and speak with conviction to make your words matter to everybody. When you're struggling, you're going to say, look, you need to do this, this, this. And they're like, well, yeah, but what are you doing? And so, I think they've got, and I talked a little bit about this already, that they're in a rhythm right now that good teams have a way that they play when they win. And they go out there and they get good starting pitching, which means they're not chasing and playing from behind all the time. They're scoring early. They're getting a lead. They're adding on runs. They're playing good defense. They're being more aggressive on the bases, which leads to more runs and creating more holes and pressure on the defense. And then you make them plays defensively, which rallies the pitchers to throw it over the plate more, which means that everybody's excited when they come in off the field. And so there's just this momentum that starts to roll where it impacts every component of the game, and they're in it right now. And look, at some point, they're going to come out of it, and the key will be that they just weren't a streaky team, but that they're a good team, and that a loss is only a loss and not the start of a losing streak. But I would say that they're playing some inspired baseball, and you see them rooting for each other even more instead of their heads down and that introspection that comes when everybody's struggling.
Steve, we've been sort of debating who the MVP of this team is, and that's just a feeling around town where the people are looking to give credit for this incredible run they've been on here. We've heard on this station in the past handful of days a bunch of different choices. I think Tatman and I both were leaning Springer as our MVP. We heard Rich Griffin, our former Blue Jays PR guy and great contributor here at TSN Radio. Griff had Alejandro Kirk as his MVP. We've heard votes for Bo Bichette from others. Where do you land on who the MVP of this Blue Jays team to date would be?
Yeah, it's interesting that and there's something that I think is very telling about the fact that it's hard to find the one guy, and that's the key, is that you are getting contributions, that it is somebody different every night doing the job that they are. And I think right now I would probably say Springer to this point. I mean, leading the team in home runs, leading the team in RBIs, leading the team in OPS, and 10 for 10 in stolen bases. You think he's driven in the most runs. He has scored the most runs. And so actually he's 3 runs short of Vladdy in the run scored category. But and again, I think then the leadership aspect of it added on to it, I give it to Springer. But I think it's the bigger story is that there are a lot of names you can throw out there, and that's the sign of a pretty good team, or a team that's at least playing pretty good.
Now, you talked about how all the elements collide. If that was a football term, it'd be complementary football. I don't know if that exists in baseball, but I think that's what we're seeing. I want to ask you the sort of a pointed question. How legitimate is the bullpen for you? Can it continue on? I had stats in the weekend, 14 in the third inning, 6 hits, 2 runs. That's pretty darn good.
It's been good, but I think that for me, I see them as a good bullpen that can get better. And Hoffman's had a great month. There's no doubt about that, a great month of June. But I do think that for me. I want another guy that can pitch the ninth inning. You know, if I can get a Ryan Helsley, if the Cardinals fall out of it, or Munoz from Seattle if they fall out of it, I would like to get another ninth inning guy or an eighth, ninth inning guy that, you know, you can mix and match Hoffman with a little bit at the end of the game. I think that, you know, that's one for me that I want to shorten the game for the rotation and know that if you play the Blue Jays, that you better have a lead after 5, because if you don't, you're going to get a string of relievers that can shut you down. And I think they're probably one impact reliever away from being able to do that, and one guy that, you know, can blend in with the rest of that bullpen, you know, and I'd like a little more support from the left side there if you can. And then, you know, I think you've got to consider where you are at the starting rotation. I know that, you know, with Lauer and Scherzer, and certainly there's a little more stability there, but I want to make sure that I'm protecting anything catastrophic. This is not a year to hedge your bet. This is a year to go for it. You made the investment in Vladdy. He's the youngest he's ever going to be. And, you know, you don't know you don't have Bichette next year under control. You don't know what, you know, you don't have Bassett next year under control. You've got some decisions you're going to have to make. And I understand that they don't like to you know, give away the farm. Remember in the whole Mark Shapiro getting on Ross Atkins back in 2015 when they went for it and they went big and they get Price and Tulowitzki and those guys. But you know what? I'm going for it, because if you wait for next year may not ever get here. Injuries get in the way. We saw the injuries Bichette did for the last several years. You know, you don't know what you're going to get from other guys. You're going to get underperformance and aging players, and you've got the bounce back from Springer. You've got Bichette and Guerrero in the mix of things. If you can get Santander going, but you know, you've got Kirk, you've got Luke's doing things. You've got a lot of guys contributing. I think you've got to go for it and do not hedge your bet at the trade deadline.
What do you make of the Yankees, Steve? Like, how big a threat are the Yankees to sort of pull out of this swoon they're currently in? I think they lost 7 of their last 10, and it goes back even farther than that for the Yankees, where they've begun to struggle here, although they did beat your Mets to finish out the weekend series in Flushing Meadow. But, like, if you're the Blue Jays, like, how big a threat do you consider the Yankees? And, you know, what is the sort of factors that are going to swirl around and decide whether or not the Yankees actually make the charge that the Blue Jays would dread, or the Yankees sort of wallow in their sorrow and fall out of the race?
Yeah, so, you know, just to be clear, they're only my Mets when they win the games. You know, when they lose the games, they're the team that fired me. I have nothing to do with them anymore. Okay?
Gotcha. Noted.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that I mean, the Yankees have some pitching problems. And the injuries have really hit them hard. And you know, and for every team, you know, every team has problems, every team has issues, but, you know, they're a team that they were in a rrhythm, and now they've gotten out of it. You know, Fried's been very good, obviously, for them, but, you know, Rodon had a bobble, and now look, they've lost a number of pitchers to injury, and now it's, you know, Clark Schmidt is dinged up again right now, and, you know, you got Marcus Stroman back in the mix for them, and they need Stroman. Remember, he wanted to trade because he wasn't going to be a starter. Then he got hurt. Now he's got a chance to start, but he's got a 7 ERA. And, you know, they're going bullpen days on some days, and their bullpen's getting worn down a little bit. And you know, and you look at the end of the game, and Luke Weaver hasn't been as good as he was last year. And Devin Williams, not as good as he was last year with the Milwaukee. So, and then, you know, if Judge, and I thought this all along, I thought when Stanton came back, it was going to mess him up. That when Stanton came back, it was going to take Goldschmidt and Ben Rice and complicate their playing time and their positional play. And, you know, I think that it, you know, taking over that DH role means Judge can't ever serve as the DH. You can't give Dominguez a break in the outfield, let him DH for a day. And so, you know, I think Stanton messed them up, and their pitching has been wallowing. And with the starting pitching getting dinged around, it affects the bullpen too. So, I mean, the Yankees can turn it around. And Judge can put them on their shoulders and lead them back. And if he gets the support from any number of those other guys, they can outslug some of their pitching issues until their pitching gets better. But Brian Cashman's going to have to be really aggressive because they're losing hold of this thing right now and watching it slip through their fingertips.
Steve, without getting into the history lesson of who made the comment and what city he works in, The Blue Jays run differential of 12 after 90 games. Is that a legitimate concern, or where are you on that?
Yeah, I'm concerned about it. I think run differential certainly tells a story. And when you're 14 games over 500 and you're just a plus 12, what it means is you've had very good timing, that you've scored more on days that you had a chance to win, and you've had some blowouts mixed in there. And, when it gets away from you, it gets away from you. But generally, the more difference between how many you score and what you give up is an indicator of the strength of your team or the weakness of your team. And for the Jays, they have outperformed their numbers. Their record is outperforming the way they have performed on the field. It can balance out with a couple of blowouts here and there. But, yeah, I do think it's a little bit of a concern because we've seen in the past Alex Anthopoulos, when he was there back in 2015 and they were under 500, but they had a plus 40 run differential. He looked at it and said, we're better than our record. Timing's been a problem. Timing always turns around. And we're going to get hot, and everybody else has a hard schedule, and we're going to come back and make the playoffs and win the division, and they did. And so the run differential means something to me, but we'll only know at the end of the year if timing – because timing can last over 162 games. It can. You can just have good timing where, the days you score, you do it and you win, and the days you don't, you really lose. It's not normal, but I think it can happen. But I'm not going to look at any negative right now for the Jays. We've been wanting more offense. We've been wanting more production from the bottom half of the lineup, and now we're finally getting it. And I think really it's just more sit back and enjoy it than start to look for a nitpick for reasons why we don't want to like this team.
So the All-Star break less than a week away, Steve. The rosters are now assembled for the big game down in Atlanta next week. Who was your biggest snub on the roster? Obviously, Toronto fans thought George Springer should have been considered, given he's fourth in the American League in OPS. Who do you think got snubbed the worst in your reading of the rosters?
Yeah, I think that you can make a case that certainly Springer is a snub. I think you can make a case that Carlos Narvaez, catcher for the Red Sox, a little bit of a snub. But listen, Kirk has played out of his mind, and so I'm okay with that. And I think Soto, I think look, they may get in there at some point, and if with injuries and somebody not being able to play and perform, you can make a case Trey Turner. The Phillies is a snub. Arozarena, a bit of a snub with Seattle. He's on his way to another 2020 season overall. But, here's the thing. It doesn't matter. Framber Valdez, I don't know. Seriously? He's got a 2.9 ERA. And, the way I look at it, he's got 115 strikeouts in 115 innings. I guess it doesn't matter. Look, we can expand the roster, but there's always going to be that next guy who feels like a snub, and not everybody can make it. And, with pitchers, generally, those that deserve it get in because there are guys who can't pitch for the All-Star game, or they're a little sore, they don't want to pitch. So it's easy to get worked up now, but let's see what it looks like once we get to next Tuesday.
Steve, wanted to get your take on the cleaning of house that went on with the Washington Nationals, firing the GM Mike Rizzo and manager Dave Martinez. They've obviously had some great success with that team, winning the World Series as recently as 2019, but thought there was time for a change. How did you read that situation?
Yeah, I was surprised that it happened so quickly, and at the timing of it, it just seemed odd. Now, I know there were clauses in the contract for options to be exercised and that sort of thing that may have, my initial thought of it was, they had a really bad month of June. Owners probably thought the manager should be fired. And Mike Rizzo, the general manager, probably said, I'm not firing the manager. It's not, there's no reason to fire him. And that over that, he got fired. But I'm hearing that that's not the case, that they had an option they had to pick up, and they decided that they weren't going to do it, and they wanted to head in a different direction. And in some ways, look, if they're not going to be the leadership team moving forward, then you want somebody in place to make the draft picks for you, to make the trades at the trade deadline for you, who's going to be part of the future of that organization. And so, I don't know. I'm surprised. I think they've got a nice group of young players there. That Soto trade has been huge. Injuries have hurt them a little bit. I thought this was the year to spend money and bring in a couple of veterans around the young kids that were going to help their development, but they decided to wait a year on that. But, man, there are worse jobs in baseball than getting that Nationals job with James Wood and Mackenzie Gore and C.J. Abrams and the Hassel kid leading the way. They've got a nice foundation of some really good young players. Dylan Cruz, top prospect, first-round pick from last year. It's a fun team for sure.
Steve, thanks very much. Appreciate your perseverance.
Oh, you got it, guys. Thank you, too. Appreciate it.
As Steve Phillips. Steve joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Drive the built-in Canada, fuel-efficient, fun-to-drive Toyota RAV4. Gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com. I think, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, Dave, in all the decisions that teams make, the head guy, and for baseball, the general manager and the field manager, that's precarious.
Without a doubt. I mean, look, we've seen managers are pretty disposable in Major League Baseball, and sometimes you even wonder how sort of much in charge they are anymore in the age of analytics where everything's run by the guys in the spreadsheets. And, what decisions do you actually make as a manager is always up for debate. And we've had that debate in Toronto at really key times in playoff games, right, about who's actually making decisions.
Not lately, but.
No, not lately. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah, you're right. It is precarious. But that Washington Nationals, general manager combo there with Rizzo and Martinez, they've been around a long time, and they had the World Series ring together. And hey, it is surprising in some ways that you'd go away from that. But it's same timeline as the Raptors going away from Masai Ujiri, right? The Nationals won in 2019. The Raptors won in 2019. The honeymoon's over, and you got to start thinking about the future. And sometimes ownership thinks about the future in a different way than the people in the current seats.
The big agenda.
There you go. The big agenda backed by the big money.
That's right. Well, the bottom line. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. And, look at this. Yes Guy, No Guy is next in OverDrive. You're listening on TSN 1050, watching on TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Overdrive, Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk with the Toronto Star. All this week, Al's brother will make special appearances, I believe Wednesday, Thursday. I might be wrong on that. I know there's a couple of days in there. But in the meantime, we have this.
Yes guy, no guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for Yes Guy, No Guy, the official version of the game as signed off on by Yes Guy LLP, now available on Overdrive. You all set?
Can't wait.
Here we go. Yes Guy, No Guy number one. The 2025 Blue Jays are at the same level as the 2015 Blue Jays.
Well, look, are they yet at the level of the 2015 Blue Jays in the hearts and minds of Blue Jay fans? No, because this team hasn't done what that team did, which was electrify this city after the longest playoff drought in the four major sports in North America was overturned by the incredible trade deadline work of Alex Anthopoulos, who took a team that was 50-51 on July 28th and turned it into a team that went all the way to the ALCS. So it hasn't done that. Does it have the makings of that? Does it have the feeling of a team that could achieve great things? Yeah, I think it's starting to get that feeling.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a no guy there as well. It could be, but we're early. We're not even at the All-Star break. But it does rekindle memories of that. And we hope that they keep doing that. But way too early to make the call there. So that's a firm no guy. Yes guy, no guy number two. Blue Jays must sign Bo Bichette at the start of the offseason.
Well, I'm a kind of yes guy on that in terms of if you want to keep him and you've got clarity that he wants to stay, why would you sort of wait? You know, I mean, why wouldn't he be signed by now, I guess would be the question. But
yeah,
there's no clarity on that right now. So, you know, yes guy, ideally, in an ideal world, for a guy who's, you know, bounced back off of last year's horrendous season, injury-plagued season, and is now a guy that people are talking about in the hierarchy of Blue Jay MVPs to this point in the season. He's a guy you need. He's a guy you'd want to have around. But it's about mutual respect and mutual agreement here, and we've never gotten any clarity whether Bo Bichette wants to stay here long term. Now, maybe a season like the one they're having, if it continues, will make him want to stay.
I'm going to kind of go no guy here. I just think if that was the case, he'd already be signed.
Yeah.
You know, again, not before the All-Star break, and you know, projecting to what happens, we don't know if he's going to continue on the way he is or not.
Well, you'd have to believe that some of that would have to do with how this season ends up.
Yeah.
You know, if the magic we've seen over the last handful of weeks continues into August, September, and October, maybe, you know, all the assumptions about the fact that Bo Bichette wants no long-term part of Toronto, maybe those assumptions will turn out to be wrong.
So now we have summer cooler questions, which means they're all hockey until the end of this segment. Yes guy, no guy number three. Kelly Yarncroke and David Camp will both be on different teams by opening night of the season, which means October.
I'm a yes guy on that in all likelihood. I mean, it seems like they're surplus guys. Like Toronto's got a lot of guys that are bottom six quality. I mean, David Camp didn't even really contribute to the playoff hunt for the Maple Leafs, making decent money.
Yeah,
you'd like to be able to. Now, how do you move a guy like that? What do you get for him? Do you trade him to a team that needs to get to the floor? We do know there are teams that will be in that position, depending on how their caps shake out. Yeah, it just seems to me like, you know, what impact have they made here? And are there other players in the hierarchy right now that have a better claim on those top six or those bottom six forward slots? And I would say probably yes.
Yeah, so Camp's at 2.4 for the next two. Yarncroke is at 2.1, and this season will be his final on his current deal. I'm going to go yes guy on that. I believe that one of them, if there's any trade, and there has to be one, at least, one of these guys is in the trade for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is they're not particularly attractive assets, right? You know, other than if you're trying to make up, you know, salary cap floor space.
Yeah, they've just got a glut of bottom six forwards now.
They do. I think
they've got 11 of them.
You know, neither guy's exactly a sell-high proposition, right?
No, part of a package.
Part of a package and there may be somebody that sees value there.
Yes guy, no guy, number four. Max Pacioretty will re-sign with the Maple Leafs.
If I had to guess on this, and it's a guess, I'd say yes, guy. I'd say I think there's a feeling that, when all is said and done, as tough as the season was for him last year, living away from his family, as tough as the season was last year, not playing from mid-February until the beginning of the playoffs, and then having to wait to get into the lineup as the playoffs began. It was a good season for Max Pacioretty. Like he had some incredible moments.
Yeah.
For a 36-year-old guy coming off double Achilles problems, pretty amazing comeback. And when you got close to Max Pacioretty in that dressing room at times last year, this guy loves the game, man. He was absolutely reveling in the idea of being an impact player on a team that needed his impact desperately at times.
Second line left winger in the playoffs.
And I just don't Father Time's undefeated, but Max Pacioretty, did a pretty good job of sort of keeping him at arm's length last year.
I'm going to say no guy with the Leafs, just because of what he said, how stressful it was in his family. I don't think he wants to revisit that. So I think he plays, but not with the Leafs.
Yeah, that's another possibility. But the fit is there though for the Leafs.
Oh yeah,
there's a reason why he chose the Leafs last year, and there's a reason why the Leafs would like to have him back. Because the fit's there. He fills a role that they need.
Yeah, yes guy, no guy number 5, Jack Roslovic would be a great fit with the Leafs.
I'm a yes guy on this.
Yeah.
Could I go from great to good? Can I go from great to pretty good? I'm not going to. Maybe great's not the word I'd use, but he'd be a potentially amenable fit. He'd be
a fit.
He'd be a fit.
Yeah.
Let's leave the adjective out until we see a little bit of evidence of how great he would be. But
check it next year.
There is the fact that he's got some sort of history with Austin Matthews, and a right shot. A guy who can feed, knows what Matthews likes, knows where to hit Matthews theoretically, although they haven't played together since they were, development team guys back down in the States. But look, we've just been talking about it. They're going to need help in terms of replacing Marner by committee. And maybe there's a great fit, who knows, but a fit, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go yes guy on that. He's a fit. Definitely could play for the Leafs. So let's do yes guy, no guy number 6. Connor McDavid, Eichel, Kaprizov will all finish their careers with their respective teams.
Well, I'm going to go a big no guy on this.
Yeah.
Just because it's just, obviously with McDavid, it's just so rare for anybody to play for one franchise. And we just had Marty Biron on talking about how McDavid's at the point of his career where shorter deals might make sense, and putting pressure on the Edmonton Oilers to put the team around him that can maximize his competitive window here is going to be a factor. So the idea that they're going to be able to do that, they've had an underwhelming start with this offseason so far. And so McDavid alone, I just have a hard time believing that he at some point won't test the waters and look, at least contemplate a future beyond Northern Alberta.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I might even venture to say all 3 of them will move on at some point.
Yeah.
They'll have the opportunity to, for sure.
Right, exactly. They'll definitely have opportunity. It's just so rare in this league. Now Eichel's on his second team. Who knows with Kaprizov? We don't know a lot about that guy. I don't think we get a lot of windows into what he really is looking for, what he's really going to like. And we'll find out shortly, I guess. But yeah, McDavid alone, I'm saying no guy.
Let me just throw in an ad lib. Yes guy, no guy. Yes guy, no guy. You are buying into the Blue Jays. You're drinking the Blue Jays Kool-Aid here.
Well, I'm a no guy on Kool-Aid. I'm well aware that this team stunk out of the gate.
Oh yes, they did.
By extension, they could stink again, and they may well stink again. But look, I'm like anybody in this town. Like when the teams are doing well in this city, it's a great city to be in. Like there's very, like, the magic of summer nights at the ballpark when the team is good. You can't beat that stuff. Like it's infectious. It makes the whole city alive. It makes the downtown alive. It makes all those businesses around that building alive. It makes the streets alive after games and before games. And that's kind of an infectious thing. And as somebody who lives in the city, I like that a lot. So I'm I buy that. Like I buy that people are buying into this team, and I buy that people are excited about this team, and that in itself is a really good thing.
You know, when you think of the Raptors, and obviously 6 years now since the title, still some residue there. The Leafs playoff failure, the Jays stumble. It's just all dressed up and no place to go when you're talking about the downtown for playoff runs. Everybody's all set for it. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean that's why the championship parade. What is it? 6 years ago now. Just like that. Those are moments you'll always remember, right? Like,
yeah.
Having known people who were at the last Leafs championship parade in '67, none of whom thought they were at the last Leafs championship parade. They all thought, they'll probably win it.
Well,
again in a couple of years.
They'd won 4 in the decade, so it was a regular thing.
Right, but that's the beauty of sports, and that's the beauty of sort of celebrating the moment. I find it funny, in our day and age of the way we consume sports and the way we think about sports, it's actually amazing to me. Like all my Blue Jay loving, people that I text and email with, everybody's kind of caught up in the deadline, and like everybody's like, what do we trade for? What do we need? What do they do? How should they go about this? And it's like people have a hard time kind of enjoying the moment. It's like because this isn't enough, right? Like a nice little run in June and July is not enough.
If you don't back it up, it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's great to have the town on board, but the bandwagon can get a lot more people aboard, and if it doesn't end up in a place that's a lot more satisfying than the playoff runs of the Shapiro-Atkins era have ended up, it's not going to mean all that much.
Well, and they're in Chicago tonight, and then weekend in Oakland. 2 very beatable ball teams, 6 games in 7 days. They've won 8 straight. The recipe is there, isn't it?
The recipe's there for the 14-game win streak into the All-Star break, Jim. Although those White Sox have been pesky.
Yeah, to the Jays too.
To the Jays.
Yeah.
Beat them 2 of the 3 the last time they were in Toronto. So, yeah, you don't want to pencil in wins against these bottom feeders because they do win.
A reminder: more on the Jays at 6:30 with Eric Kratz, and at the top of the hour, Maple Leaf hopeful Easton Cowan, who had just a great end to his junior hockey career, Memorial Cup, and, of course, a couple of stints on the World Junior team and ready for NHL action. We'll get his thoughts on that. And up next, an open segment, so it's going to be a potpourri of stuff that we're going to talk about. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Wrapping up hour number 2 of Overdrive, Jim Taddy, Dave Feshchuk from the Toronto Star. And on the way in, TSN 1050 giving you a chance to win VIP club access to the Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto. Today's Indy Insider keyword is speed. Starting right now, you have 10 minutes and 50 seconds to text speed along with your name and city to 105050. Next Monday, first up, we'll be calling one listener with a VIP package, including seats in a covered suite located at trackside and turn 11, food and beverage, access to the IndyCar paddock to get up and close with the teams, cars, and drivers, and standard message rates apply. Full details at tsn1050.ca. Nice little package there.
Really nice package. It's always a great event.
Yeah, it is, and it's been around for years, and they're really a fan pleaser. Masai Ujiri was a fan pleaser. Delivered the big trades, the gutsy moves, sort of a handbook on how to asset manage your situation. Let go by the Raptors a couple of weeks ago. Said a goodbye on the ABC show, Good Morning, the Good Morning Show, and issued his own release today. So let's listen to that.
How much does Toronto mean to you?
Yeah, well, that's well said. I mean, you don't have to say anything, just the words. He had an interesting, and I guess maybe for lack of a better description, lovable connection with his city, didn't he?
That was one of his strengths as an executive, Jim, was the idea that I remember talking to Jed Hughes, and Jed Hughes is not a household name in Toronto, but Hughes was the guy who headed the search that landed on Masai Ujiri as the next president of the Toronto Raptors back in 2013 when Tim Lewicki came to Toronto espousing that winning is everything and we got to start having that New York, LA mentality that we don't accept anything but winning. Lewicki went out looking for presidents. And, of course, on the Leaf side, he brought in Brendan Shanahan. On the Raptors side, he got Jed Hughes, who was a headhunter, to find Masai Ujiri. And Jed said to me one time, he said, the beauty of Masai is he can communicate with everybody in the building. He can talk to the usher, like they're friends and they're long lost, and he can spend time with that person and make them feel important. And he can talk to the owner, the usher and the owner, and he can instill confidence and belief and sort of a good feeling, in both those people. And that, is a rare skill. Like the idea that you're that high profile executive, you're that in demand, but you're also an everyman.
Anytime he was with us in the booth, I mean, he had a way of communicating, as you say there, that would be on your level, which again is a really good skill. For me, he brought the franchise credibility, brought it to a different level, and certainly increased the value of the franchise tenfold. But aside from that, the asset management, which is something we'll talk about on any team, for a guy to come in and remove the coach of the year and one of the more popular players in DeMar DeRozan and turn that into a championship, that is just textbook. You won't see that often. I mean,
it's not only one of the great trades in Toronto sports history. I'd say it's the best. It's one of the great trades in sports history. Like, it really is. It's like, how do you go from good to great? It's the toughest step to take, right? Take a team that was knocking on the door of Eastern Finals but couldn't get past LeBron all those years with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan as its main 1-2 punch. Take that team and make them a contender, make them an instant championship threat with one deal. And it was a deal that was very difficult to make because you talk about connection. I mean, DeMar DeRozan had an incredible connection not only with Masai Ujiri and with the coaching staff of that team and with everybody involved in that team because he'd been drafted by the Raptors, developed by the Raptors, become an all-star with the Raptors. I mean, he had a great connection with the fan base, too. And people love, to this day, love DeMar DeRozan and have a lot of time for DeMar DeRozan. So that was a tough trade. It was tough to fire Dwayne Casey, when given all that Dwayne Casey had done for the Toronto Raptors program through all those years. But after LeBron got him again in that playoff sweep, I mean, you talk about the emotion of Masai Ujiri. I'll never forget that night in Cleveland. I was there, and LeBron went down and went one on 5 against the Raptors and hit that bank shot to win the series and finish out the sweep. And by a lot of accounts, there was real acrimony in the coach's office, and Masai Ujiri was the source of it, demanding better. Like, we can't keep losing to this guy. Something's got to change. Guess what? Fired the coach, made the trade. Next year, won the championship.
And the feeling was at the time that if something big didn't happen, the regression was going to start to hit the franchise, and he pushed the button at the right time. Probably the strangest thing is you could fire a coach of the year and replace him with one of your own assistants and have it work out. Nick Nurse was a perfect fit for what happened the next year. Well,
it's sometimes forgotten that coaching search went on a long time. And I remember, doing some reporting on it and trying to figure out who they were going to hire. And Mike Budenholzer was in the running. There were a lot of names thrown into the hat. Masai Ujiri did a lot of due diligence during that time. And it was kind of an interesting choice in the end, because as more than one coaching agent said to me, like, it's pretty tough to make the case that the guy sitting next to Dwayne Casey for the past handful of years is the solution to replace Dwayne Casey. Because obviously Nick Nurse had a hand in all those losses that Dwayne Casey presided over to LeBron in those big games, that the ones that really, really ate at Masai Ujiri and wanted him to, or sort of inspired him to make change. So it was an interesting choice. It was an off-the-board choice in a lot of ways, and Nick Nurse was an off-the-board coach in a lot of ways. We saw, his sort of knack for boxing one, outside the boxing one defenses and janky defenses, as Steph Curry derisively called the Raptors defense during that finals. And it ended up being a massive success.
We'll continue on. Easton Cowan joins us next on OverDrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Oh, yes, guy. Hour number 3. OverDrive on a Monday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Stars, subbing for the regulars who are long gone. They've adiosed. They're gone.
On many a golf course, 2 of them, and Noodles, who knows what he's up to.
Scattered. There's
Movie theater.
Yeah, that's right. Popcorn. Yeah.
Good for a run.
Yeah. What is your favorite offseason? To me, I sort of lean towards the NBA. There's just all kinds of fireworks. So where are you on that?
Well, there's always drama in the NBA.
Oh.
I mean, the players make sure of that.
Yeah.
LeBron's doing his drama as usual, talking about how he wants the Lakers to understand that his competitive window's now, as if the Lakers don't somehow understand that. And yeah, we just saw today, hey, Kyle Lowry's coming back. How about that? Good old Kyle Lowry, man who many believe should have his number 7 retired in the Raptors here in Toronto. He's going to go back to Philly for one more year, his 20th year, Jim. I would not have bet the over on Kyle Lowry over 19 years in the league.
So these are the fun things. I think you'll agree with me that when you cover sports, so you see Kyle Lowry in game 1 of the championship run, blanked. Did not score a point. And I remember 90 seconds into the game, Kyle had a manner about him where if he wasn't there that night, you would see him argue more. And 90 seconds into the game, we did that game, I turned to, I think it was Dwayne Watson I was working with, and said, not going to happen tonight for Kyle. And it didn't. But from that moment on, it did. But that's a guy going from good player to franchise player in the span of one game.
Well, and we were just talking about Masai Ujiri, and I think you got to give Masai a lot of credit for that too, because that was remember that year? It was a really trying year in some ways around Kyle Lowry, because obviously there was discontent with the DeMar DeRozan trade. His running mate and pal was traded out of town. Kawhi Leonard comes in. He's not Kyle's pal. Not that they're not friends, not that they didn't get along, but Kawhi came in with demands, right? It was all they coined a whole new term, load management for this guy. And I think if that team wouldn't have won the championship and wouldn't have done as well as it did, I think there would have been more public discontent about the special treatment Kawhi Leonard got around his health.
Well,
and other guys were probably saying, hey, what about me? I'm grinding away here.
He delivered. I can't tell you how many
he did, but
I would look down and see the Raptors down by 10 in the third quarter, and this guy would either make a defensive stop or go down and drain a 3 or a 2 and stop that lead from continuing on and would cut into it. And that was a turning point in a lot of those games.
Yeah, exactly.
He did it. He backed up what he did.
Well, and look, but there was a moment in that season where Masai Ujiri was seriously considering moving on from Kyle Lowry. And they had this.
Not the first time.
Not the first time, obviously. Yeah. Got a little lucky on another time when they nearly had him traded to the Knicks. We all know that story. But, that one, the story about Masai Ujiri having the real kind of pre-trade deadline heart-to-heart with Kyle Lowry saying, hey, listen, are you in or you out? Like, you want to challenge. You want to be the guy here. Challenged him, demanded more from him. Said, look, I can make a trade. I'm trading for Marc Gasol. I could throw in Mike Conley, who can also play point guard, and you can go somewhere else if you want. And that was a real option that was put on the table. And in the end, Masai Ujiri, again, a great communicator, a great sort of injector of enthusiasm into situations. I think he put a little bit of a jump into Kyle Lowry's step from then on, and we all know how it turned out.
So he's going to the Sixers on a one-year deal. Norman Powell goes from the Clippers, to the Heat, 3-team trade. Knicks hire Mike Brown as their new head coach, and Tyler Johnson in hockey announces his retirement. I just want to go back to Kyle Lowry before Easton Cowan joins us. Do you think now he gets a statue because of the change at the top?
It's a good question. I mean, I was really against them kind of beginning their franchise tradition of retiring numbers with Vince Carter. I didn't think that had anything to do with winning. And if you want to have franchise standards and want to say what your franchise is about, to me, under Masai Ujiri, it was about winning. It was. And so, Vince Carter had nothing to do with winning, obviously. Didn't win anything as a Raptor, had a sub-500 record as a Raptor. Kyle Lowry was the heart and soul of a team that won. And so his number 7, to me, should have been the first number up there. It won't be now. I think it will go up there. Now, statues is another matter. Like the Leafs have all their Legends Row, and good on Brendan Shanahan for paying homage to, demanding that the franchise pay homage to those guys after many, many years of neglect, as you know well, Tatman, that this franchise really did not respect its heritage for a lot of years. Turned their back on it, had acrimonious relationships with their greatest all-time player and Dave Keon, and many others. So, yeah, I think the Raptors probably will get into the statue business at some point. But then again,
maybe not.
The only statue we know now, we have an ownership change. We have the Rogers Corporation running things. The only statue they've built outside of the ballpark is one of Ted Rogers,
right?
Mr. Rogers, the original Mr. Rogers, a great guy who obviously bought the team. And so they haven't been statue guys over at Rogers. They're running all of MLSE now, so who knows where it's heading.
We don't. And getting there will be all the fun. Let's go back to hockey. Easton Cowan is with us now. Easton, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure to have you, and it'll be great to explore the conversation. We'll get to the horse in mere seconds. But before we get there, I mean, you're a multiple attendee at a development camp. So as a development camp veteran, what do you sort of take out of all this?
Yeah, I mean, any days in Toronto there around the facilities will help you get better as a person and a player. So being able to go there again and just being able to, work out there with their development staff was huge for me and everyone there.
Okay, let's get to the horse. Okay, Easton, that was the big story out of development camp, at least for some of us. And it's kind of funny, Easton, we had Marty Biron on, our great analyst, former NHL goaltender, and he loved the idea because he's a horse guy, and he was telling us great horse stories and many of the other kind of leadership development opportunities he had as a player that he really enjoyed. They were a little bit outside the box. And then we had former coach Bruce Boudreau on last week, and he called it the dumbest idea he'd ever heard of, bringing you guys out to see a horse trainer training a horse. Where did you lie on the experience?
I mean, I liked it. I live on the farm. We don't have any animals here, but being able to see how fast, the horses caught along and how they train them was pretty cool. And you can kind of take that and bring it over to the hockey side of things, I guess.
And in terms of the other experience at developmental camp, we know they brought in a bunch of different speakers and other sort of people that were trying to relay messages to you. What stood out among that roster?
I mean, obviously a lot of, old NHL players and talent talking to us. So it was pretty cool, but definitely Mark Giordano's story, how he was undrafted and went over to Russia for a year and then signed a deal with Calgary, ended up being the captain there and winning in Norris. But it was so cool to hear his story. And no matter, if you're drafted or not, it just kind of showed that he just stuck with it and good things came and he had a great career.
So let's wrap up your junior career. And first of all, congratulations on a great junior career. And I want to circle around this stat. First player since 71-72, and that's Guy Lafleur, by the way, to lead the Memorial Cup in scoring 2 years in a row. That's you. Congratulations on that. And you got the job done with the Memorial Cup win this year. So I think a year ago, last fall, everybody's talking about, will he be on the Leafs? What's the point of sending him back to junior? What did you get out of that year with the London Knights?
I mean, I went to training camp. I tried to make the team, wasn't ready yet, and came back to London. And obviously, under the Hunters organization, you're going to learn no matter how old you are during junior. So came back with a positive attitude, learned a lot, got better, and now I'm sitting here today, and I'm definitely a better player this year than I was last year for sure.
Easton, obviously, you've made no secret of the fact that you really admired and idolized even Mitch Marner as you were developing as a player, as you continue to develop as a player. What was your reaction when you heard that Mitch Marner wouldn't be a fellow colleague with the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward?
Yeah, obviously, he's helped me out a lot ever since I was drafted to the Leafs. Him playing in London, I feel like we had that connection. So obviously it sucked, but I'm happy for him and his family. I hope he does very well over there. And, yeah.
So as you get set for training camp in the fall, obviously there's a roster spot there for you. How do you see yourself fitting in, and what do you want to work on?
I mean, I came back to junior this year to work on managing the puck, and I felt like I did a great job of that. So I'm just going to bring that to camp. Obviously, camp's still a couple months away, so I'm just going to take it day by day now, keep getting better, keep getting bigger, faster and stronger, and I feel like I'll be on the perfect path. But not too worried about camp right now, but when I get there, obviously there's a job up for grabs, and I'm willing to work for it.
Easton, I was wondering about, your workload. The Maple Leafs have talked about how they didn't want you to go on the ice at developmental camp because you played such a heavy schedule this season. The last thing you needed was more ice time at this time of year. But between now and camp, I mean, do you get any downtime? Like, how do you approach that?
I mean, I took a lot of time off. I took a month off of skating. It was my first day back on the ice today, and been working out for this will be my third week now. So just getting back into things. It's been good, obviously time off, but now you're getting to almost the middle of July. So now you got to start kicking things into gear, and just excited to keep training and keep pushing myself each and every day.
I mean, you're at that point where you look back to junior, and it's going to seem like it was a year ago. You set that point record, 56-game point streak, surpassing Doug Gilmour's OHL record. What was that like?
Yeah, obviously that was super cool. I mean, I've played on so many good teams here in London, so wouldn't be able to do that without my teammates. And everyone you play with on the team, just saw the ice super well, and we gelled very well. So, yeah, obviously it was super cool to have my name in the same sentence as Gilmour.
You talked about getting bigger, Easton. I mean, what's the feeling about where you're at physically and where you need to get to be at your best at the NHL level?
I told my trainer today, actually, that I've never felt this good in my life. I feel super healthy, and, I feel strong and fast and, as big as I have been so far in my life. So I just got to keep pushing myself, get to the weight I want to be at, and still be able to, use my speed to my advantage. So I just got to keep going.
The fall comes fast. Easton, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you, guys.
Easton Cowan, Maple Leaf prospect is the title. But I think there's a lot of assumptions here that if he could do a Matthew Nyes over the next 2 years, this franchise would be in a better spot.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, to have him roll in there and say, you know what, that top six forward you were looking for? I'm that guy. I mean, he's obviously got the skill level to do it. You don't become what he's become at the junior level without the skill. It's some of the other components, like the puck management skills that he's been working on in that year in junior, the physicality that he's going to have to endure to play an 82-game schedule at this level. Those are question marks, but there's no reason why you can't answer them in the positive.
Well, he's going to get a long look, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, barring a trade, Jim, which we're all hankering for, I know.
It's just when you look at the roster, you just go, okay, so you know what has to come in, but you don't know what goes out.
Right. And, we talked about, hey, wouldn't it be great if they could get something for David Camp and Calle Yarncroc? But I don't think you're getting prime materials.
Those are sort of filler parts of the trade, maybe to make a dollar thing work, although there's a number of teams that have all kinds of space, so I don't know how relevant that is.
Yeah, it's hard to know. But, I mean, the easiest answer to the question would be, hey, let's just let this kid wow us. Let this kid come into camp and absolutely make it an undeniable fact that he belongs on the roster and he can play on one of the top lines. I mean, I don't know how likely that is. I don't know what the Jerry's percentage on that one is.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably, if I had to put it, I mean, it's probably like 30%, maybe 25%. It's not high.
No, but I sort of get stuck when I have a Maple Leaf conversation, because I go back to the cold hard fact they have to be better than they were last year. That's a hard thing to do when 102 points walks out the door.
Yeah.
And a really good penalty killer and power play guy at the same time. I mean, there was a lot of tools in that box. So obviously, they're sort of the $12 million walk out the door. But then you have to find the three guys to fill in. I'm not saying they can't, and when they do, it'll be a different configuration. But I don't know that makes them better.
You're right. That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line here. Florida didn't get worse.
No. No, they did not.
So that's the scary thing right now. The only thing you can hope for is, hey, Florida didn't get worse, but they did get a year older. You got to think eventually they're going to get tired. I mean, we thought that last year. It didn't happen.
Some people said that in the first round this year.
Yeah.
They're going to run out of gas.
Well, they did
really
go down 0-2 and nearly go down 0-3, so it did look like they were. Sorry, that was the second round.
Yeah, so when you go back to that game and the Leafs had two goal leads and lost it in overtime, who would have understood at that time that was actually the door opening to a Stanley Cup win, even though the Leafs still had a 2-1 series lead? That was the door opening, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think a lot of people at the time said the Leafs are going to kick themselves for letting this one get away. I mean, the idea of
it woke them up.
I mean, it just felt like I remember sitting in the press box in that game thinking, like, are they really doing this? Like, they're gonna go up 3-0 on the defending Stanley Cup champions. Like,
they could have, yeah,
should have,
but didn't. It actually had some past Game 7 odors about it, didn't it?
Yeah, and Game 5.
Oh, wow. When you get into Game 5 and Game 7, those are like what? And then,
of course, it had the punctuation mark of Brad Marchand doing it to him, right?
Oh, well, that's sort of a normal ending.
Exactly. But man, it's that was the moment, right? In a lot of ways, that was the moment where no matter how much Florida kicked it into gear, if they would have been down 0-3, I just can't imagine they would have won the series. So the Leafs would have been into the conference final for the first time. Brendan Shanahan would still be the team president.
Or would he have been?
Oh, he would have been.
You think so?
Pelly pretty much said as much, that he had that they basically set the bar at conference final.
Okay.
So I think my guess would have been. I would have put a high Jerry's percentage on Shanahan being back if they would have made a conference final for the first time under his Shanahan plan.
So they would have re-signed him.
Yeah, I don't know for how long. They wouldn't have given, like, he had 11 years guaranteed to that point. I don't think they would have given him another 5 or 6. Maybe they give him another 2 or 3. Although with Shanahan, I mean, how did he get the 6-year guarantee after the 5-year guarantee? None of us ever could figure that one out. But so I would never underestimate his powers of negotiation in a boardroom with a bunch of people who are charmed by his Hall of Fame credentials and his Stanley Cup rings and his just general knack for, understanding how to sell yourself in this world, because he's really good at it. But everything would have been different, Jim. I mean, who even knows if Mitch Marner would have had a change of heart if suddenly the feeling was this team was moving in the right direction rather than, it's the same old team that can't play in the big games.
That's always a question, especially in this marketplace. What happens if? And we never get to the if because it doesn't happen. So what's your Jerry's percentage that Easton Cowan plays top 6 at one point next season? I got to go, I think that's a really, I'd go 80 on that.
They'll showcase him at that level. They'll give him some chances.
Yeah, you got to figure out if he can do it.
Yeah, I'd go even higher. Like, I think it's a lock that they'll do that, unless he really disappoints at camp. Like, he comes in.
I don't see that happen.
But I don't see that. Like, this is a kid. He's back to training today, back to skating today. He said he had enough time off. He says his body's feeling good. He's putting on the muscle he wants to put on. Yeah, this kid's a gamer, man. That's the thing. All the scouts that I've talked to that have watched this kid much more closely than most of us have, they just keep saying motor. Kid's got a motor, man.
Yeah, the guys I had on my show would have said starts in the bottom 6 and works his way up. But I mean, you've got an opening on the right side as we talk right now. Opening on the right side of the top line, opening on the left side of the second line.
Right, and there's
you can shift people around.
And you talked about the Matthew Nyes sort of precedent for. You know what? If you're going to bring in a kid and you really believe in the kid and you've invested resources in the kid in the form of, whatever you've invested in, put him in the best possible spot right out of the gate and see how he does.
Let's see what you have.
Yeah.
They did that with Nyes in a lot of respects,
That's
didn't
what
they?
I mean. It worked out pretty damn well.
Yeah, they played him up and then dropped him down and played him back up again.
Right. You can always drop him down, but you expose him to where you want him to be and see how he does. Like, it's a young man's league in a lot of ways. And we've seen, obviously, Florida Panthers are telling us there's also some value in having old guys, too.
Well, if you have the right collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, there's many different ways to build a team. But bottom line is we've seen plenty of 20-year-olds come in and play really well at this level, at the top 6 level, contributing offensively. Question is, will you be able to trust them down the stretch in big moments and big games?
Well, let's get there first.
Puck management. Yeah, get there first. See how he does for the first handful of games. But I'm 100%. Like, I would give it a 9. Like, outside of something really weird happening, like he's injury plagued or he's just not doing it for some reason, that would probably be an off the ice concern. largely due to injury. I just can't see him not getting an audition in a top 6 role.
I don't know where you are in this, but for me, you'll see announcements, and I'm going to preface that by saying Dustin Schwartz won't return as the Oilers goalie coach. You see goalie coaches change. When Leafs brought in Curtis Sanford, that made a big difference. They struggled with goalies for a number of years, brought in a different goalie coach, changed goalies, and all of a sudden it works. Now, I don't know that the goalie coach is the problem with Edmonton, but I think that's the place you would start.
Yeah, if I'm an Oilers fan, that kind of worries me, right? This idea that you're going to change your goaltending situation by changing the goalie coach.
Well, you start there. So.
Okay, start there, but maybe change the goalies at some point.
Well, I think they have to, don't they?
I don't know how they could personally, but they seem to feel otherwise. They've been doing this for a while, right? Where they really don't address it, so they don't feel as strongly as the rest of us about it, obviously. So I wouldn't be shocked if they came into the season with those two guys again. I mean, I guess their argument is, hey, we made the Cup final 2 years in a row. What's the problem here? We just got to get over the hump.
They lost a number of forwards. They've got some work to do.
And I guess they can make the case. Look, if you want to defend their status quo there, obviously they don't have a lot of the cap room's an issue, and those two guys are cheap. And it's not like they have an option to get a guy who's just better than Sergei Bobrovsky, right? Like, oh, we can get a better goaltender than Sergei Bobrovsky. They would love to have one, but maybe changing the coach makes some sense. I mean, obviously.
Current cap space is $175K.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they'd have to move some pieces around to accommodate
that's tight.
Superior, more expensive goaltending. But, yeah, I mean, the goaltending coaching thing, man, it's, for any of us pretending to understand how it works and why it works, I mean, I'm not even sure a lot of GMs understand or really care to understand how and why it works.
They have $175K to spend. Their goaltending combined is $3.6 million combined.
Yeah. Right.
That's got to be a elite
good value
goal.
At least.
Well, it is, but it doesn't.
I mean, I guess so they can make the case. Look, we've won the Western Conference 2 years in a row with that goaltending. So, you tell us you got a better idea. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Zach Hyman, what do we want to do there? We want to play that clip again? Okay, so he's at his charity golf tournament. Talking about his wrist injury, and the question is, will he be ready to start the season with the Oilers?
You still hoping to be available for the start of next season?
Yeah. I don't even know what the timeline is, to be honest, but that's definitely not out of the question. So I haven't set a date or anything like that. I've dealt with it with the ACL. Once you set a date, you get disappointed if you don't play on that date. So I hope to play on opening night. I don't know if I will. We'll see.
They'd love to have him back for sure.
Well, they'll need him back, but yeah, you got to take it slow on an injury like that. Wouldn't be shocking if he really eased into the season. What's the point of you know what? You look back on the way the Leafs handled Austin Matthews' mystery injury. I'm not sure what the rush was to get him in the lineup on opening night if he was hurt in training camp. And if I'm the Oilers, I don't see any rush to get Zach Hyman in the lineup on opening night if it's going to impact his season. He's got to be 100% back. That wrist has got to feel before it got hurt. And if it doesn't, sit out. Make sure it's good.
Look, the Austin Matthews injury, whatever it is, it'd be nice to know so you could sort of deal with it. And that's an internal thing. That's the way they chose to handle that. But it's just a little kind of a question mark, isn't it? What was that? And how do they fix that? And how do you feel confident? I know the team has to deal with that, but everybody on the outside would like to know that.
Well, exactly. It's a big question mark because the question is this. If Austin Matthews is right about what he said at the end of the season, which is that the month's rest in the offseason will be enough to get this thing right. A few months off in the offseason will be enough to get this thing right. Why didn't he take a few months off in the regular season and get it right for the playoffs?
And put him on the long-term injury list and bring in somebody else.
It's a very good question, is it not?
Yeah, sure it is.
I mean,
totally relevant.
Nobody cared that he got 33 goals in the regular season. All anybody cared about was the fact that he wasn't particularly effective in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so I'll never understand it, and nobody's given us an explanation. And I think the problem with the NHL right now is the way they kind of deal with, choose your own adventure injury reporting. You can report or you don't have to report. Or you don't have to. You can tell us something. You can tell us nothing. I mean, it's just a bad fan relations move. Fans deserve to know a little bit about what's going on with the the guy who made the most money in the league. I mean,
I agree with
that's
that.
my opinion.
No,
the NHL doesn't seem to share it.
No, I totally agree. That's kind of a big question mark that sort of hangs over the team. We'll deal with the Blue Jays who are in Chicago tonight. Eric Kratz will join us, Foul Territory podcast host, former Major League Baseball player, had some time with the Jays. That's next. This is OverDrive on TSN 2 and TSN 1050.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, yes, guy. Final half hour for OverDrive on a Monday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star reporting for duty. And the Jays are off to Chicago. 3 against the White Sox. Day off. 3 in Oakland against the A's All-Star break, which will push them to 96 games.
Not in Oakland, by the way.
No.
Sacramento.
Yes, that's right. Sacramento.
They're not the Oakland Athletics. They're not the Sacramento Athletics.
They're the A's.
They're just the Athletics.
The A's, yeah.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, that and the Tampa story but we understand why that happened. Interesting times, right?
Quite a league. Quite a league.
Yeah. Well, they get through it. So the bottom line is we'll deal with what happens with the Jays at 96 games by the All-Star break, which means, quick math, 66 left after that. We'll see where they are. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Let's bring in Eric Kratz now, Blue Jay draft pick in 2002, host of the Foul Territory podcast and former NBA player as well. Eric, welcome. How are you?
Former NBA player, that would be awesome.
Did I say NBA? I said MLB. Sorry.
MLB, but yeah. I would love to.
Well, so would I.
If you want to say I was an NBA player, I bet I could definitely make a three-pointer at some point if I kept shooting. But don't forget, I was also a minor leaguer too, so that's a big part of it.
Yeah, probably wouldn't be wasting your time with us if you were an NBA player.
Is that how it goes?
Well, there'd be more money. Let's put it that way. So in terms of the Blue Jays winning streak, we're all thrilled here. Different looks on different nights. Different people are heroes. What's your take on that?
I mean, isn't that what you want as one as a fan base, but two as an organization? Like, if you have to go out and buy every single one of your players, you're never going to have sustained success. Now, something that the Blue Jays have had a tough time doing is maybe living up to expectations, but a lot of it was surrounding the guys coming up from their minor leagues. You know, Gavin Biggio, you had Bo Bichette, you had Vladimir Guerrero, and there was a lot of pressure on those guys. And they reached the playoffs, which was like, okay, here we go. This is the time. And then it's kind of fallen. It kind of fell back. I mean, it was bleak. No offense. Those guys were the guys that, the reason they went out and got all that pitching. So when you say the Blue Jays are winning games from everybody, contributions from Tyler Heineman, contributions from Ernie Clement, from David Schneider, you're like, okay, I kind of can get behind this. And as a fan base, you're like, I love this because David Schneider is one of us. Tyler Heineman is one of us, a working class hero who gets an opportunity to do something cool in the big leagues and taking advantage of it together as a team. It's so fun to watch.
So, Eric, one of the amazing things about this run is, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the $500 million man, has not had great power numbers this year, although he's hitting the ball hard and getting on base a lot and scoring runs. And, of course, Anthony Santander, the big offseason power bat they brought in, hasn't been a factor in this run at all. It was the Blue Jays' real upturn in their fortunes coincided with Santander sitting down on the IL. What do you make of that? The idea that Vladdy hasn't really caught fire yet and Santander hasn't given them anything. What does that mean to you as they approach the final 66 here?
You guys aren't on. You guys don't have any Yankees fans that listen to your show, do you?
No, not at all.
The Yankees, because that means the Yankees are cooked. If that's the case, if they're doing all this without those guys, that is a great thing for Jays fan. That is a great thing for this team. Now, are some guys going to regress back to the norm, to the mean? Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen right when those guys get back. Look, a 3-game lead right now is nothing to sneeze at. I always laugh on the show when people are like, "Oh man, you're not giving them enough credit." They're only 4 games back of the wild card, and I'm like, what? Like 4 games back after like a 3-game sweep of a team, and you expect your team to be doing good? The Jays are 3 games ahead of the division right now. And to me, if you're getting those guys back, they're going to hit. They're going to hit dingers. Maybe Vladdy's not going to hit dingers, but he's kind of a chameleon. He does what is needed. If he needs to hit a ball to the gap, he'll do it. he needs to hit the ball to right center field, he'll do it. It's not just all or nothing dingers or nothing, we got no chance, that kind of thing. But you sit there and you go, Santander is going to come back. Even if he has a down year, he's going to end with 20 homers. I'm sure you can find 20 homers to help a team win. Like, that's guaranteed. And it's not, he's up and down. I didn't expect 40 homers from him just because he did it before. Like, you say, all right, if he has up and down years, we can deal with when he comes back, finishing the season out with 20 dingers. Like, this team's riding high if that's the case. But the team is built on defense and pitching, and they've been doing that without Dalton Varsho. That's my biggest. When Dalton Varsho's back and fully healthy, that's my biggest person that's going to come back to bolster what this team's already doing.
There's just so many things that are working well for the Jays. The one that we talked about was they seemed to have a 2.5-year run where they couldn't score a run when they needed to, and now all of a sudden it happens on a nightly basis. How does that turn around?
Believe me, if I knew, I would not. You said NBA guys make a lot of money. If I knew that, I would be making a lot of money. That is for sure. I wouldn't be selling hot air like my dad says I do, being on our show. But it's one of those things that if I'm going to lean towards something, it's really based on your stars. I mean, when George Springer's in and out of your lineup, it creates an inconsistency that you can't find somebody to take the level of success that you need from George Springer. Like, what he's doing just adds a fear in the lineup for pitchers. And pitchers would never admit to it. But they're like, I don't care. I'm just throwing one pitch at a time. The reality is, if you have George Springer hitting like he's been hitting, not just clutch, but driving the baseball, you're more apt to say, okay, I know it's 4 batters away. I'm facing the 8 and 9 spot, but I can't lose Tyler Heineman. I can't lose Ernie Clement. I can't lose Andres Jimenez. So they have to kind of give in to those guys a little bit because of who is behind them. And it's really your stars, George, Bo, Vladdy. Those are the guys that make the other guys better, and they've been doing that all year so far.
Eric, another guy that's an all-star this year for the Blue Jays, Alejandro Kirk. We've had people on this. We've had people on this show making the case that he ought to be the Blue Jays MVP, given how, if you really want to take the MVP, you literally he's valuable because he's hard to replace, right? Like, to find a catcher that can hit like he's hit, to have it, be among the leaders on the team in OPS and a lot of other key stats. He's been indispensable. You've been a guy who's, crouched behind the plate and tried to make a living as a hitter at the same time. What do you make of Kirk's season to date?
I mean, if you really dissect the numbers, you'd be more impressed with the fact of what he's doing. Like, his bat-to-ball skills are an anomaly in the game right now. Like, he doesn't strike out, puts the ball in play, and now he's starting to do damage too. Yeah, there's a lot of doubles, but he's hitting some dingers that you're sitting there going, oh, wow. Like, didn't think he was going to hit a homer in that spot. And he's not hitting a lot of homers, but they're big homers, and he just has a knack for putting together at-bats. Unlike guys in the game put together at-bats right now. I sit there and I go, who makes lineups turn over? That's different than aircraft carriers who make pitchers afraid. Who makes lineups turn over? And I look at guys like Max Muncy in L.A. Is he going to ever have the highest numbers, the highest OPS? No. Can he get really hot? Absolutely. But what they do is they don't swing and miss. They don't give pitchers too much of an area to breathe. Alejandro Kirk right now, I'd still take Vladdy, but Alejandro Kirk right now is a close second place for if you're in Game 7 of the World Series with bases loaded and all you need is a hit. Alejandro Kirk's the guy. Like, if you need to get off a deserted island, I don't know how I got to the deserted island, but if the only way off is somebody makes contact for me, it's Alejandro Kirk. The fella does it, and I was kind of skeptical of giving him an extension because his defensive numbers went down last year a little bit, but he's worth every penny, and they got a steal.
A lot of people in this marketplace have already gone to the end of July. It's the trade deadline. How do the Jays approach that?
By taking, I don't know if you guys ever played poker, but I feel like when they signed Vladdy, they said, you know what? We have a big bet here. We got a nice hand. We're going to push some of our chips in. Time to push them all in. I couldn't be more of a, I am not in a Ross Atkins or Shapiro corner at all. I'm not fans of them. I don't think they've handled things very well since they've been with the Jays. I don't think they've handled people very well, but this is their chance. If they want to keep this job that I don't know how they've kept it this long, it's time to go all in. It's time to go all in, and you not only bolster your strengths. So when you go to pick guys up, you go pick defense up. That's bolstering your strength. I think that'll cost you a lot less than getting that power bat. Bring the long lost son home. Josh Naylor needs to be a Blue Jay. I get it. They already have a first baseman, but how can you get left-handed power with quality at bats? Josh Naylor's walk rate has gone up and his strikeout rate has gone down this year. It's a concerted effort for him to improve that. And you say, oh, well, you can't replace Vladdy. Listen, this is 2-month rental plus a month for the playoffs. If you go get Senior Josh Naylor, this team, this fan base that's already behind this team will flourish. Because I've never heard anything bad about him as a clubhouse guy. You're bringing the native son home for 2 months. And, to me, it's a no-brainer. To me, that's where they go. And obviously, everybody says the same thing. Starting pitching and relief pitching.
Right.
I don't think you guys really needed to hear that. Everybody knows that's what every team wants. But you bolster your defense, and you go and get Josh Naylor.
That's fascinating stuff. Hey, we wanted to get your take, Eric, given your background as a catcher. The interesting MVP debate in the American League with obviously Aaron Judge, the perennial candidate, and Cal Raleigh, the catcher with the Seattle Mariners, who's having a hell of a year, leading with 35 home runs to Judge's 33. Where do you stand on that debate?
Gosh darn it! I knew you guys would ask me this. I had a big argument. I had a big argument on our show with AJ Przinsky, and I said the question was posed: who is the first half MVP? And I said it's Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is the first half MVP because, one, there's no such thing as a first half MVP.
Right.
Two, Cal Raleigh has not broken any records yet. He hasn't done, and I am the strongest proponent of catchers getting awards because catchers, one, are underpaid, two, they are underappreciated, and so I'll stand up for him. But what Aaron Judge has done, he's the first half MVP. If Cal Raleigh continues to do what he's doing, he will be the MVP of the league. So maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but to me, I think you guys are sponsored by FanDuel. That's what it said when I came on. I think Cal Raleigh's coming out at plus 450 some places, plus 650. Yeah, I would say go and get some Cal Raleigh stock because this man has done nothing but historical things. And I think the way the season's going to go, he'll end up winning the MVP, which will be a huge upset over Judge having another ridiculous year.
Eric, we'll leave on that. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, boys.
Eric Kratz, Foul Territory host and former Major League Baseball player. A couple of notes here. Manoah's throwing to live hitters again tomorrow in Florida, simulating 2 innings. And John Schneider says that after that, he'll either throw one more live session to his own hitters or move into his first rehab game. So could be an interesting ramp up there.
Yeah.
An arm on the way.
Going to be intriguing.
That would be an interesting reconfiguration.
Certainly would be.
Yeah.
Certainly would be. It would be a great redemption story or a nice comeback story.
Well, the Jays have done that before, so
yeah,
we'll see if it happens again. We certainly hope it does for them. And
interesting stuff from Eric Kratz there, talking about trying to repatriate Josh Naylor, Mississauga's own Josh Naylor.
That's a headline, isn't it?
I like that idea.
So
I mean,
do
it's
I.
a little bit outside the box because he plays first base and all.
But
yeah, he made a pretty good case.
This is the year. Go for it.
Yeah. Hey, man, another power bat.
Fascinating.
You had that on your shopping list,
That's right. Yeah. It's a fascinating 3 weeks. Obviously things will get into a lull next week with the All-Star break, but after that, should be all kinds of trade talk, and we'll see where that goes. And then, of course, the deadline. Roll the dice.
Going to be good. Well, and as Eric Kratz mentioned, push the poker chips into the middle of the table.
We're all in.
Yeah.
Well, they told us it was going to be 2025, and that's where we are, so why not?
No time like the present.
All last year. It's 2025.
Nobody's getting any younger.
No guy. No guy to that. This is OverDrive. You're listening on TSN 1050 and watching on TSN 2.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, final segment. Overdrive on a Monday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feshchuk from the Toronto Star with you. Soon, Doogie will have the best bets. Doogie, yes, guy.